All right, we are live. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, my fellow comic book collectors, depending on where you are in the world and whatever time you watch this. Hopefully you will watch this live because we're doing a live Q&A. So if you would like to join in the festivities, you don't even have to be a subscriber. If you have any kind of comic book question, I will try and do my best to answer them to the best of my ability. And if I can't, I promise you, someone in the live chat may have more knowledge than me on a certain topic, so don't be afraid to come into the live chat, ask your questions. Now, one of the things I want to highly stress is if you can please place your questions in the form of capital letters, because then I will be able to see them easier so I don't accidentally skip over your question without seeing it. So if you would be so kind to ask your questions in capital letters, I will be able to see them a little bit better. Now, instead of you just looking at an image, I'm going to put this on. So this way, because I know if you watch these channels, sometimes either on your cell phone or on, like, for example, an Xbox or PlayStation, they won't show you the scrolling of the comments. So I thought I would add this so you could get the opportunity to do that. So I also put a link if anybody's interested in my mystery boxes. I have the comic book mystery boxes. The link I just placed, I'll do that periodically. So if anybody's interested, you can click on the link I provided in the live chat. It's also in the description of every video. Once you go there, you'll see like some pyramids and stuff. They're things that I make and sell. You scroll all the way down near the bottom, and you'll see the comic book section. So I don't want to say hello to too many people because there's probably going to be a long video, so I'll say hello to the first couple that are here. So forgive me, normally I do a little bit more, but Alex the Comic Hoarder, you are first today. Welcome. Harvey, you're in second. Daryl, Daniel, Lewis, Collector, RJ, Florence, It's Danny M8, and Anthony, and Paul, Luck, and the Kid, Wild Child, Ariel, James, and we have a super chat, and I always want to make sure that I say hello to anybody that says anything in the super chats and thank them for it. So it's Danny M8 says, no question here, your streams just make my day. Well, I'm glad to hear that. Thank you for that. And that's exactly why I love doing these. So thank you for that super chat. Anybody that does a super chat, I will make sure that I get them a shout out. So one of the things, if you do a super chat and you have a channel, put the link. Let me know about it. I will promote it for you because, you know, if somebody's going to do something nice, I want to make sure I do the same thing. So once again, if you want to ask any comic book related question, just make sure it's in capital letters. I will go in order that they've appeared. If I don't see it, please forgive me, especially if it wasn't done in capital letters. I might skip it, but we'll go as long as you guys want. So I don't have to do anything until 6 o'clock. So if it goes 3 hours, we'll go 3 hours. So join in on the live chat. Let everybody know in your social medias this is going on. So even if they're not subscribed, they may have a question we can answer. And remember, there is no foolish question. If you are brand new to comic book collecting, this is a channel that will not mock you if you ask me what side of a backing board do you put in front of facing the comic. So there are channels where they have almost an elitist kind of atmosphere where they'll make you feel bad for asking questions. Here, you can ask the most basic question. And I will tell anybody in the live chat, if you ridicule somebody because they may be newer than you and may not know as much as you, you will be blocked from the channel. So we normally don't get that here, so I don't have to worry. But I just want to make sure that people that are new are comfortable with asking any questions. So there is no ridiculous question, crazy question, or something too simple. Because we have to remember, not everybody has been collecting comics for 30 years. Some people may have started 30 minutes ago. And they might have a question that people have known for decades. Doesn't mean everybody does, so please keep that in mind. All right, so with that being said, let's start answering some of the questions, and we'll go as long as you guys want to go. So we're going to start out with the first question, which is also from the first person in the chat. Hopefully Alex is still here. Welcome and thank you. He says, Chris, what's up, brother? And I look up at the ceiling, so that's the first easy question. It says, what is one comic book key issue that isn't big yet that you want to see skyrocket? He answered this. He asked this about 15 minutes ago, and I wanted to make sure I thought about that. It's a really good question. There's so many different books, but I think one that would not be very expensive now that I would love to see is Avengers number 8. Now that, of course, is the Silver Age, but that is the first appearance of Kang the Conqueror. Now, there have been rumors that, especially with Phase 4, they're going to be going more into outer space and stuff. There have been rumors that he may appear, but there's been no confirmation of that. That book, even in lower grade, you could still find for under $50 at this point. And we know that once a character has a debut in a movie or TV show, those books tend to skyrocket. So I would love to see Kang the Conqueror, not just for monetary value, but the fact that he's from the future. It would go well with the whole quote-unquote time thing, even though it's actually kind of funny. The MCU and everybody doesn't seem to understand there's no such thing as time travel. It's actually they're just going to alternate dimensions due to a fractal universe. So you're never going back and front in time. You're just going to different dimensions and different parallel universes. So there is no such thing as actual time machines. But we'll get into that another time if anybody wants to get into that a little bit deeper. But I think of all of them, as far as something that's not very expensive at this point, now obviously you're not going to find that book in the dollar bin, but it's definitely not thousands of dollars like if you tried to get Hulk 181 in a 1.0. So I think Avengers number 8, first Kang. I would love to see Kang. And I think another character that did not have its due, that deserves it, that was already in a movie, would be Tales of Suspense number 50, again the Silver Age, which is the first appearance of the Mandarin. Because technically, even though he was in Iron Man 2, that was not the Mandarin, it was just an actor. So a lot of people, including myself, were very disappointed about that, because in the beginning, the TV version of the Mandarin looked really cool, looked very intimidating, and then to find out it was just a joke was kind of a slap in the face. So I think Avengers 8, which is the first Kang, and Tales of Suspense number 50, the first Mandarin, I would love to see those two in a comic book movie. They would make very good villains. All right, so Harvey says, hey, Chris, just mentioned you over at Reggie's latest live chat. Well, that's nice of you. Hopefully you said something nice. He also says, not comic related, but how's your research in the big move? We had to put that on hold just a little while because of all the financial burdens, which we took on very happily. But with all the times we had to take Luna to the vet and all the medications and all the foods and everything, we literally spent thousands of dollars, which was well worth it. So I'm definitely not complaining. But that kind of delayed a little bit. Plus losing my DJ jobs, that kind of put it a little on hiatus. But it's just a matter of if, not a matter of when we'll get back into it. I'm sorry, it's a matter of when, not if. So we will be getting back into it soon, but we did put that on hold because, you know, our cats are family to us. So I'm sure many people would understand if they had to do that. And if they had to put their cat in a vet several times for several different things. I mean, she has heart disease, she has diabetes, and all the other problems complicated from it. You can understand how the bills kind of escalate a little bit. But we will move eventually. We didn't want to move because we had to. We're doing it because we want to. So they just got delayed probably about a year. But if I win the lottery, then, you know, we'll move quicker. So thank you for that question. All right, so Daniel says, the man of comic knowledge, you're great. Thank you. So let's scroll down again. If you put it in caps, I will be able to see it. So if you have any questions, make sure they're all in capital letters. Paul says, hi from the UK. Always love the fact there are people from other countries that want to chime in. All right, so the bad thing is when well, not really bad, but when a lot of people are asking questions, you start scrolling down, all of a sudden it skips to the end. All right, so let's see. We got a lot of people saying hello. Florence says, Chris always makes my day. I always appreciate that. All right, Huffhouse Art says, do you believe follow-up prints are a worthy investment? I personally don't purchase those, like the those dollar Marvel, you know, where they reprint, because to me it's not a first appearance of anything. It's just basically, it's like taking a photocopy of Hulk 181, for example. Some of them are worth something. I don't understand that, but I mean, again, when it comes to anything of an investment, when people ask, is this worth it, is that worth it, it really depends on the price. Like, for example, if somebody bought one of the reprints of, you know, Amazing Fantasy 15, If you bought it for $1 and can sell it for $10, well, you made a $9 profit. So you're not really going to be able to buy a house with that unless it's a Barbie dream house or something. But a profit is a profit is a profit. So I personally don't like reprints. Back in the days in the 90s, nobody collected like even second prints. It was very rare because they did not have the same value. Because, if you have Hulk 181 and then they made they didn't do this, but if they made a second printing of Hulk 181, that's not Wolverine's first appearance anymore. So to me, it always lost its value. But, the good thing is not everybody collects the same. So what somebody else might not like makes it easier for somebody who does. So if you think they're a worthy investment, then by all means get them. But always try and get them as cheap as you can. Don't overspend on something that is basically a reprint. All right, so what is the first appearance of Scarlet Witch, says Michael B. Well, that's pretty easy. You can Google that, but you came here to ask the question. That would be X-Men number 4, which is the first Silver Age appearance of not only the Scarlet Witch, but also Quicksilver and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, I believe it's called. So it's a very early X-Men book. Pretty expensive book, but not as expensive as you would think, considering both of them have been in the movies. I definitely preferred Quicksilver's version better in the Fox X-Men version. But Scarlet Witch has been doing pretty darn good, and we'll see what happens with her TV show, but that's the first appearance of that. The easiest way to ever do that is you can go on eBay, and you could type in first appearance of something, and it'll usually come up. Or you could just, I use Bing. I don't use Google. I don't support a program that basically gets paid to spy on you. But that's a story for another time. I have telepathy, says I'm driving, and I wasn't able to get on, which is a little confusing, because if that's true, I wouldn't be able to read your comment. But please be careful if you are driving. All right, so Michael Wong says, how long are you on eBay searching for books on a daily basis? Well, these days, not as much, and I've already explained why, but normally, it really depends. One of the things I love about my situation is being a massage therapist, being a DJ, selling the mystery boxes. Also, if you ever went to the website, and again, I'll post the link if you're interested in that. I also make and sell like organic soaps and things like that, and these things called, the crystal pyramids and stuff. I do a lot of stuff at home, and I don't work a lot of long hours, because even when I DJ, like for example, I'm going to be doing a party this Saturday, I'm going to make about $500 for doing 4 hours worth of work. So I could literally work part-time and be able to focus more of being at home, taking care of the cats and things like that. But there are times I will literally spend hours on eBay, because it's like finding a needle in the haystack. It's not very often where I just go on eBay and all of a sudden I find something. But that has happened as well. There are times where I'll literally put on eBay, I'll go to the ending soonest, and within 30 seconds there's a book that I would really want, bid on it, and win. So the more time and effort you put into something, the more likely you are to reap a reward. So it does take time. And I have eBay tip videos on my playlists, so check those out. I give away a lot of my secrets, which, I don't charge for those secrets, and giving them away kind of makes my ability a little bit harder, but I still get deals anytime. So it's all about changing your mindset, putting in the effort. So I would say sometimes, like literally when it comes to newly listed books on eBay, I will refresh every 3 to 5 minutes, sometimes for hours. So it's almost like that's almost like a job for me in a sense. But I mean, I could find books like, for example, about a week before the Black Panther movie came out, I got it was Fantastic Four 52 and 53 for $99.98 for both of them, including shipping. I sent in the 52 to get graded. It came back a 5.5. So it's worth the time if you're willing to do it. Most people can't do it or not willing to do it. You get what you give. So very good question. All right. Again, if you are writing capital letters, I will be able to see it. Chris, a 5.5 is going for $500 to $750 on eBay. I'm not sure what you're referring to. Oh, okay. Miss Marvel 16 through 18. I think that's overpriced. I wouldn't spend that money on that. I would wait for better deals because Miss Marvel, there's a lot of controversy and there is nothing going on with Mystique as of now. So I would not overpay for that book. I'd wait for a deal because obviously there's no hurry for any Mystique stuff right now. All right, Buff Muffin, love the name. Says, how do you feel about the multiple variants that are coming out for a single issue? As a 90s collector who went through the comic crash, I absolutely hate the amount of variants they are doing. Back when I started my original channel in 2015 and stopped it around very early 2017 or 2016, I don't remember at this point, I was buying every variant under the sun. I would literally go every week and buy hundreds of dollars worth of comics, and most of them were variants. 90% of them aren't worth jack. When they're doing things like, for example, the Action Comics 1000, things like that, and they do hundreds of different graded variants and everything, it just floods the market, and that's never good. Now, obviously, the reason people do it is a lot of people like the covers that they do, but it's the same book with a different cover. Now, a rarer book has a better chance of having value, but again, it always depends on what you pay for it. So, the variant debacle and the prices going from an average of about $4.99 now has kept me from really buying any new books anymore. Every now and then I'll get them, but I just feel they're flooding the market. It's going to cause another 90s crash. The only thing, and I have a video on this about the crashes of the comic market, the only thing sustaining it is the fact that Marvel movies are doing so amazingly well. And I've always said that once Marvel gets 3 bad movies in a row, and by I mean bad, I mean financial unsuccessful movies. I don't mean, something you may not like. But if Marvel has 3 failed financial movies in a row, I think most people will walk away by the second bad movie for fear and start selling books. And because most people panic and they go based on what other people do and they base it on their emotions, most people will follow along and you'll see the demise. But I don't see that anytime soon unless they keep going in more and more of an SJW kind of direction. I really hope they don't. Do not kill the golden goose. So, to me, variants, I stay away from them, but every now and then you might be successful. But what I will also say is, if you love them, then by all means buy them. Just because I might not like it, or just because 99% of the world doesn't like it, does not mean it should stop you or intimidate you from buying something that you love. So, you go with what is best for you. Okay. Okay, he didn't do this in capitals, but I did manage to see it. So again, if you're just coming in, please ask your questions in capital letters so I won't miss it. But Louis Simone says, hi Chris, Lou from New Jersey. What comic is Killer Croc's first appearance? I believe that is Batman 357. I think that's the first full appearance, which is also first appearance of, what's his name? Todd, the Batman Todd. I forget his other name, his last name, but I think it's 357. It's a definitely good book to have, but like first appearances and stuff like that, that's easy to find out. All right, so it's a good book to have, but it's definitely gone down. It was really hot right before the Suicide Squad movie, but when that came out, that debacle of a movie, his value definitely lowered, which is, to me, a good buying opportunity. So if you get the chance, check that book out. Get it while it's on the lower end. Will it rise again? Who knows? I'm not sure if they'll use that character again. And if they do, he didn't have a major role in the movie. Just kind of an appearance. All right, so Wild Child says, can you give us any info on the new PGX, like new cases? I actually can. The new cases are going to be ready within the next month. There were problems with the manufacturers. That's why it took so long. Daniel Patterson, who is the owner of PGX, has been in communication with me and is actually going to be doing some of my ideas. I'll give you the ideas right now, which I'm so amazed that a company actually listens to somebody like me. I mean, I'm a small channel. I have less than 10,000 subscribers. So in the grand scheme of things, I'm not some major influencer, but, when I make a video about getting comics, all of a sudden you see prices rise a little bit on eBay and people selling them. So I do take responsibility in knowing that I am a little bit of an influencer when it comes to comic books. The fact that he would even listen is amazing. So one of the things I said is their PGX insignia should not be on the front. It should be on the back. And their, those silver kind of stickers that have the company's name on it, that should be in the front. So we switched that. I also talked about the graders notes. Once they get the new cases, they're going to go back to applying the graders notes. So they will be the only company. It's a $5 fee per book. But I mean, to me, it's worth it if you want them. So the reason they do it as an option is not everybody may want the graders notes. Some sellers, like you see on the video I did the other day on eBay, some eBayers want to sell stuff and be sneaky about it. So the last thing they want is graders notes on a book, because that'll actually contradict something they might be claiming. But they listen to that, so that will be coming back soon, where if you want for a $5 fee, you can have the graders notes on the back of the slab. The next thing that I told them about is the actual, when you see the font and the colors of the font in all grading companies, they use nothing but black. What I suggested is the title of the comic, like for example, if it's Eternals #1, they should be in brighter, different colors so it stands out more. And I suggested, and they actually brought it a little further, if it's a blue label, the title of the comic will be printed in blue. If it's a green label, it will be listed in green, and etc. So it actually makes it a little bit easier to tell if the comic has been qualified, if it's signature verified, by the color of the title. So instead of all black font, the name of the comic will be in a different color. So it makes it stand out a little bit more. So I'm really happy that they're willing to listen to me. Now, again, I don't get paid by them. And it's just amazing that there's a company out there willing to listen. And to me, that's a good thing. And that's what we want from more companies. So the new cases should be in about another month or so. Again, they were delayed only because of the fact that the manufacturing company, they made them and they made them inferior. So they could have easily went with them and just used them and dealt with the fallback later. But they decided to wait another month or two and get the real cases that they wanted. I have telepathy, says Chris. How did Thanos jump 5 years into the future in Endgame? All right, so this is a spoiler if you haven't seen Endgame. I've watched it several times. I think it's an amazing movie. The more I watched it, the more it grew on me. Thanos was able to jump 5 years into the future in Endgame because basically he ended up, because of his daughter, not Gamora, I forget her name. I'm getting a brain freeze on it, but she had a link to her past self. So they were connected because she was a lot more machine than whatever race of species she was. So they were able to get the information from the future version of the character and ended up getting some of the Pym particles, which basically they're saying is, without saying it, that he ended up making duplicate amounts of the Pym particles and was able to shrink his ship and everything in it, because you have to go into the quantum realm. You have to be tiny enough to get in there. So that's what the Pym particles were all about. And because she got the information, because when they were trying to get I believe not the Power Stone, it was the one on the planet from Guardians of the Galaxy. But when they were trying to get that stone, she was abducted by Thanos. So they got the wristband that gave the ability to go forward in quote time. So he was able to use that, and obviously because he's kind of a very smart person, you basically have to make the assumption that he took the Pym particles that she had, duplicated it so he could shrink the entire ship. And because he got the wristband that had the guidance system, was able to go forward in time. So, again, there's no such thing as actual time. It's all about jumping into different dimensions, but that's a whole philosophical thing for another time. Harvey Abel says, are you following War of the Realms? Again, I don't buy a lot of new comics anymore, so no, I'm not following them. It's just disappointing. I mean, first of all, like I said, I will not spend $4.99 on a new book. That's just my own principle thing. I don't want to give money away, and it's not the fact that I can't afford it. It's just the principle. They're getting way too expensive for the quality of the content, so I'm not following any of the newer stuff at this point. I'm kind of focusing more on Silver Age, Bronze Age kind of stuff. Rick Boring says, hi, can you explain what a file copy is? You'd have to be a little bit more specific by what you mean of a file copy. All right, and I see somebody did a super chat, but I don't see it. I want to make sure. Hold on a second. Oh, okay, there we go. Comic Addiction, I want to make sure. I couldn't see it for some reason. But Comic Addiction, thank you for that. He says, Chris, you're such an inspiration to me. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I really I'm ready to keep making videos now that I've moved. That's awesome, man. I'm very glad to hear that. He's been definitely a great channel. Please go subscribe to his channel. Post the link in the description. And I'm glad to see you're getting back on track. So he moved recently as well. So that can be, that definitely puts things on hold. All right, so Rick, be a little more specific on file copy. I'm not really sure what you mean by that. I've actually not heard of that term, so that might be one I may not be able to answer. But ask it again, and if I can't answer it, I guarantee you somebody in the live chat or somebody watching this later will be able to answer that. Let's see. Okay, again, please put it in capital letters so I can see it. But James Roberts has been collecting 2 years now, mostly books from the 80s, mainly DC. Can you recommend some Marvel 80s books? Absolutely. I have several videos. If you go on my playlist, you will see videos where I have probably 20 to 30 videos that not only tell you what books to get, but show them to you. So I would highly recommend checking that out. As far as 80s books, obviously, anything that's key issue is going to be worth getting. But again, it depends on what you love. Because I'm more Marvel than DC. But, I mean, first of all, buy what you can afford. Buy what you like. And then do your research. Check out what movies are going to be coming out. Check out rumors. And always make sure you know that even rumors, or even things where they say somebody's going to be in a movie, they can be cut. So always remember that. There have been plenty of characters they claim were going to be in movies that ended up being in it for 2 seconds or not being in it at all. I mean, look what happened with Crossbones. He wasn't a major significant thing in the Civil War movie. So, you're taking your chance. So that's why it's very hard when it comes to recommendations, because you want to make sure it's something that you love, especially if you overspend for it. Because if it doesn't work out and you bought a book you didn't enjoy, now you're stuck with it. So RG Taylor says he likes this format, and I always appreciate that. I Have Telepathy says, what's up with all the caps? The reason is because a lot of people just ask regular, just make statements. The capital letters would allow me to see it easier. So anybody asking questions, I tell them if they can put it in all capital letters, it just makes it easier for me to see. So again, I'll post the link to my my comic boxes if anybody's interested. Let's see. Okay, so Comic Addiction says, what's your thoughts on the new Gambit movie? Well, as of now, there isn't one. So, very hard to see. I do hope if Marvel and Disney decide to do it, which I don't think they are, but I think Gambit will be part of the X-Men. I just have a feeling when they're ready to do the X-Men, it will most likely be the newer X-Men version and not the original X-Men. I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I would love to see Gambit. A solo movie I wasn't that excited about, especially I would love to see another actor. I actually like the original actor that played Gambit in the Wolverine movie. That was probably one of the only good things about that Wolverine movie. But as of now, it's not happening. So with all the new stuff that Disney and Marvel have, I just don't see them doing a Gambit movie anymore. So I think they would just move Gambit into the X-Men. I hope they do, because I would love to see him. I would love for them to actually do Jubilee right. I mean, they have not utilized their character, and I used to love watching the 90s X-Men cartoon, and one of my favorites at the time was actually Jubilee. I always thought she was a cool character. She kind of reminded me of Robin, Batman and Robin, and I'm sure that's kind of how they molded her. But I just always thought she was an interesting character. I remember the first time I ever heard of Wolverine when I was a kid was in the cartoons. And I was like, who is this character? And his only power is to have claws? I'm like, really? So at the time, I didn't know anything about his character. But I just don't see Gambit having a solo film anymore. Now, obviously, that can change. But with all the stuff they have now, I just don't think they'd have time for it. So at best, we can hope for him in the X-Men movies. And I hope they do that. All right, so I have telepathy. We answered his question. All right. Okay. Luckily, I'm seeing some of these, but again, try and write them in capital so I could see them, and because I don't want to skip over. All right, Mr. Comic says, hey, Chris, bit of a gray area, but when do you consider the best time to sell spec books based on an upcoming MCU? Thinking beta rebuild, Taskmaster. I don't really recommend telling people when is the best time to sell. The reason being is, buying it cheap is one thing. But let's say, for example, I tell you to sell a book tomorrow. And you make an okay profit. But then 6 months later, we find out that they're going to be in a movie. And now that book could have been sold for 10 times what you sold it for. Well, people are going to probably blame me for that. There's very few exceptions. Like, the only time I told people this is an absolute time to sell was Thor 390. Because I saw the writing on the wall on that. That's just an event that happened in one movie. It will never happen again. So I saw that as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to sell a book. But when it comes to, like, first appearances and origins, because there's rumors right now, for example, that Ultron may come back. So if anybody sold the Ultron books because the books, got pretty cheap, and now all of a sudden they bring them back, those books are going to go right back up again. So if I would have told people to sell those books, and now all of a sudden the prices are up, they might get mad at me. Because most people just don't take responsibility for their own actions, and they like to kill the messenger. So I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but is the one that I basically tell people, trust your instincts and go based on what you think is best. I really can't tell you, unless if I see another Thor 390 situation where I can pretty much guarantee that something is going to go down and you could sell it while the going is good, I will do that. But when it comes to first appearances, origins, and stuff like that, I want to stay away from that because I don't want anybody to think that I am, giving misinformation because, things change all the time. All right, let's see. Why is Harvey targeting me? I don't know. Okay. Kevin, thank you for your channel. Your videos have helped me make better choices in comic book investing. You're awesome. Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that. And that's the goal of my channel. I may not get everything right. I may not be, the most popular channel. I may not have all the pretty lights and special effects. But I want to think my integrity is pretty set. I want to care about people more than myself and try and give the best information I can. Sometimes I mess up and it's never deliberate. So we'll put it that way. There are times where, like, for example, the other day I said that the Eternals #1 was a newsstand variant. It came out. It's not a variant. It's not even newsstand. But, I will never intentionally try and deceive somebody. So mistakes happen and nobody's perfect. Anybody that wants to claim that is basically a liar. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And Vintage Baloney says that we appreciate you sharing information. Always glad to help. All right, Fade to Black. Do you think they will make another Vampirella or Red Sonja movie? Honestly, I do not see it in the foreseeable future. But you never know, because, they've had such problems even trying to get another Conan movie on board, even when Arnold Schwarzenegger said he would do it. So there's a lot of conflicting problems with the people who own the rights to the characters. So I think that's the major problem, especially when you get somebody that's so greedy that they care more about the, the money than the actual stories. That's a lot of the problems of why certain things don't happen, especially when there are splitting up of character rights. It causes a lot of problems. But these days, with all the female empowerment videos and movies and talk, you never know. Red Sonja might get a movie before Conan does. Hard to say at this point. If I was to say if they were going to do it, I would give it a 25% chance, and that's probably 5 to 10 years from now. I don't see it happening anytime soon. I would love to see a Vampirella movie, but I think these days with people getting offended by everything, I mean, even if they did a Vampirella movie, there is no way in this day that they would allow the costume that she has. So she'd probably be like in the first X-Men movie, in something that's just completely covered up, which kind of takes away from the popularity of her character. Whether people want to admit that or not, I'm not afraid to admit the truth. I mean, come on, why do most people like Vampirella? It's because of the outfit that she wore. So I think in this day and age, with people getting offended by everything, even if they made a Vampirella movie or a Red Sonja movie, they would not look anything remotely close to their characters. So you wouldn't see the scantily clad outfits that you would have seen that made them so popular. Because the same thing with Red Sonja. I mean, there was a reason why they put her and lots of female characters in basically bikinis. It's because they knew most of their audience was little boys, and that's what sold books. Because otherwise, like for example, key issue, Night Nurse #1. It's popular now. Why? Because it's so rare. Why? Because no one bought it. Why? Because it was just a girl in a nurse's outfit. Most boys didn't care about that. So it was canceled, I think, after only a few issues because no one wanted it. So what sex sells, whether people want to admit it or not, or are embarrassed to admit it, that's the truth and the reality of what is. So that's a major reason why I don't think those movies will get made. And if they do, they won't even come close to what made them successful because people are just too afraid to speak their own minds anymore. So even if Vampirella or Red Sonja made a movie, they would not look even remotely close to the characters they are, which takes away from the story and the effect, because Vampirella, the outfit was to basically lure people to her. Take that away, that's part of her character gone. So it would be just something that would not work, but I just don't think they're going to make those movies. I could be wrong, and I hope I am, but maybe one day people will get over being so overly sensitive and get back to, just because you think something's attractive doesn't mean you're some evil person. But people need to relax a little bit when it comes to that. Lewis says, is there a Vampirella movie? Not that I've heard, but, there's always rumors, so you never know. And nobody can confirm anything until a contract is signed anyway. So that's why I even say, like, when they talk about, like, Marvel and Disney, when they talk about how the X-Men and the Fantastic Four will not be shown for at least another 5 years. If you know anything, especially about Marvel, they lie. Not lying to deceive you, but keeping people excited about things. Like, look at their trailers. They flat out lie and put things that aren't in the movie or take out things that are supposed to be in the movie. So just because they say, for example, that the X-Men won't appear for the next 5 years doesn't mean that's going to actually happen. So there's lots of rumors going around, so whoever knows. Howard says, have you heard the rumors of Taskmaster? I've heard rumors about Taskmaster for the past 2 to 3 years. As a matter of fact, back in 2016, I was telling people to buy Amazing Spider-Man. Avengers 238, I believe, is his first appearance, if I can remember offhand. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, but it is an Avengers book. It's either 238 or 258. Just check it just to make sure. But I've heard rumors about that. As a matter of fact, Taskmaster was supposed to be in the first Deadpool movie, but they ended up taking him out because of budget problems. It would have cost too much to make the character. I personally love Taskmaster. I would love to see him in a movie. Not sure if they'd use him at this point, but you never know. So the rumors have been around for a long time. Lewis Boyle says, Chris, would you spend $125 for Marvel Premiere 15? First appearance, that's the first appearance of Iron Fist. Always depends on the grade. I wouldn't spend $125 on a 0.5 but I definitely would spend $125 on an 8.0. And that's a good comic to be getting right now. Like, even something like The Punisher, their prices are going down right now. If you really think The Punisher is going to stay down, you're crazy. So the best time to buy stuff is when no one wants it and the prices are going down. So would I spend $125 on Marvel Premiere 15? All depends on the grade. I'll tell you this much. I would not pay current prices for that book because it's on the decline. So I would wait for a deal. And since there is no hints of him being in a movie or a TV show anytime too soon, there is no buzz, which means you have time. So wait for deals. All right, so Lewis says, when does Titan Season 2 come out? That I do not know. I do not follow the DC TV shows. I would search that one on the internet. I have Telepathy has more of a statement than a question. He says he's caught in a hailstorm. I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see. Okay, James Roberts says, is it really worth grading? Well, I would have to know what you're talking about to be able to answer the question. So if you're asking a question about something that you did in a previous statement, try and relist the whole thing because I'll probably have skipped over it. And if I keep scrolling, I'm going to lose my track. So James, please ask that question again. So I'm not sure, is it really worth grading? As far as grading in general, I mean, if you're grading something, it depends on why you're grading it. I grade mine to protect them. That's why. Why spend more to grade them to protect them? Yeah, eventually I'll sell them. But, you know, here's a little secret. Because so many people say, oh, PGX sells cheaper than CGC. Last time I checked, you can crack them out of a case. So if I ever get to the point where I'm going to sell a book and I want to make more money, I can always crack them out of the case if I want to. You know, people have to think a little bit deeper. But when it comes to grading, it depends on why you're doing it. So is it really worth it? That's a question you have to ask. Answer yourself. Is a book that you're going to send worth grading? Well, you have to ask yourself, why are you trying to grade it? So, again, if you want to re-ask the question so I know what specifically you're talking about, the general answer is you have to answer that question yourself. Is it worth what you think it is to grade it and why you're grading it? If you're grading it because you want it protected, then it absolutely is worth it. You know, if you're grading it because you want to try and flip it for a lot of money, well, my question is, have you researched about the book that you're talking about? Again, I try and stress to people, knowledge is power. The more you rely on other people for information, the more that somebody could take advantage, lie, or mislead, or make a mistake. So, you know, like I said, there are plenty of times I've made mistakes. Now, if you didn't double check and you bought a book and I made a mistake on something, you know, purely accidentally, or I just had wrong information, you're the one that suffers. And yes, they said Jason Todd. So yes, thank you for that. That was the one about the first, what was it? The crocodile dude, the crocodile hunter guy. But yeah, first Jason Todd. So there's a twofer in that one. Okay, so Gino says, is anyone else astonished that Paramount is seriously considering bringing their Atlas titles to life while Disney is still sitting on the toilet with their great cross-gen titles? It does not surprise me that a company wants to make money and do it cheaply. Because remember, most people haven't heard of Atlas, which means they didn't have to buy the property for $20 billion. Look how much Disney had to spend to acquire Fox. Paramount didn't have to spend that much money. Remember, when you're investing in things, sometimes you got to take the chance on penny stocks. So Paramount probably thought, well, we don't have the rights to these major characters, and we don't want to spend a lot of money on like so-so characters, so let's try and do what Disney did with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's buy something cheap, and maybe we'll get a gold mine out of it. So I can absolutely see the reasoning why they did this, because I guarantee you, buying the rights to Atlas Comics was probably not very expensive, so it's very low risk. To me, that's smart business decisions. Now, whether they can turn that into a success depends on what they're willing to spend to make it into a success. Can they write a good story? Because remember, as much as people love Guardians of the Galaxy, 7 years ago, ask anybody about the Guardians of the Galaxy, they would have no idea what you're talking about. And if somebody could make a talking raccoon and a talking tree become icon characters, who's to say they can't do that with these characters? So, again, that's another thing. Buying it on ground floor, spending $1, up to $10, $15, maybe even $20 for these books. If they end up becoming a success, and I stress the word if, because there are no guarantees, it may never get done. Plenty of people have bought the rights for something that never saw the light of day. If it does become a success, well, if you bought in on the ground floor, you're going to make a heck of a profit. So I think Paramount made a smart decision on buying something that is comic book related, that nobody knows about, and probably bought pretty darn cheap. If it becomes a success, then that's a genius move. But if it doesn't become a success, well, they did not overspend for something and lost tremendous amounts of money. But like I said in my video yesterday, you have to not be afraid to take risks, because you will never win a race you do not run in. So keep that in mind. So I think Paramount did a very good job with that, taking the chance on something that was very low risk. Now, of course, they probably spent millions of dollars, which to you and I may seem like a big deal, but that's a lot. Like spending $10 million, and I don't know how much they spent, but let's assume it cost them about $10 to $20 million to buy the rights, probably less. That's a lot less than the billions it cost to buy Fox. So you get what you pay for, but again, they can turn that into gold if they get the right stories and get the right actors and put the effort into making it into something quality. So I think Paramount did a good job there. It remains to be seen if it's a success or happens. All right, Michael B says, getting back on Scarlet Witch, would her solo issues become something to look into? At this point, I don't see Scarlet Witch becoming anything majorly important at this point. That can change. I mean, the fact that they're putting her on a TV show kind of suggests that, they're kind of riding the wave a little bit. But again, if you can find her solo issues cheap, if you can buy it for $1 and sell it for $2, well, you doubled your money. So do I think that's going to become the next Hulk 181? No way, shape, or form. Can you make money on it? It depends on what you buy it for. Are there lots of people really on the lookout for a Scarlet Witch solo series? None that I've heard of. So it might be worth taking the chance on, but if you're a betting man or betting woman, I would not bet the farm on Scarlet Witch's solo series becoming anything worth buying. Again, if you like to read it, then there's always a reason. But I don't see that as something that's going to be up there. You never know, and I could be wrong. Time will tell. Lewis says, who picked up Batman last night on Earth? I did not. I did not go and get any new comics today. Okay, John Alfonso says, grading question. Best grade, one staple detached. I believe it can be as high as a 3.0, but I don't want to just assume. So let's go. All right, let's do this. Let's go to, because it's the one I know offhand. PGX has a grading guide. So let's see. Let's see. Loose but not completely detached. All right, so it can't be a 4. Okay, so here we go. So according to this, a used comic book showing some substantial wear, cover shows significant wear, and may be loose or even detached at one staple. So the highest grade a one detached staple can get is a 3.0. So again, the grade can be lower based on, what else is wrong with the book. But the absolute highest it can get is a 3.0. Now, I think also you can get a higher grade but labeled as qualified if there's a staple detached, if you want that. But if you want like a blue label, it would have to be a 3.0. So there are higher grades if you want the qualified green label, but many people don't want that. All right, so let's see. All right, so Silent82 Hill says, have you heard about grading companies from Europe? Are they any good? I've heard of that they were starting one or something like that. I know there's one in Australia, but not anything that people have recommended, and not anything that I see for sale. And the ones that I rarely do not sell, or they sell for incredibly low prices. So it's hard to establish a new company when there are already three major companies. And yes, I consider PGX a major company. Obviously, it goes CGC first, CBCS second, and PGX a distant third, but they're still third. But any other companies, I really wouldn't even put them as serious as of yet. Now, obviously, that can change. But if somebody in Europe has a company that they're aware of that I might not be, that think that it's worth the chance, put that in the comment section, whether you're watching it live or watching it later on. But as of now, I don't see any other grading companies that people, especially if you want to sell them, would take seriously at this point. There are others, but they're too new to become anything established yet. Time will tell. All right. So, and yes, RG Taylor says it was Nebula. Okay. Peter says, I love your fractal video feed like Pink Floyd. Yeah. I used to study stuff like quantum physics, quantum mechanics. People assume that because I talk comic books and stuff that I don't know a lot of things. And that's fine. People can assume all they want. But I used to study about the fractal universe and things like that. That's why I know. Like, I mean, I'll make it easy as far as time. I can prove it to you within 2 minutes that time doesn't exist. Time is based on the fact, if you think about it, what's a second or a minute or an hour? It's a rotation of the Earth. Well, what if you're on a planet that spins differently, faster or slower, or one that doesn't spin at all? How would you be able to determine what an hour was? Well, what's a month? A month is the moon completely doing a complete rotation around the Earth. Well, what happens if you live on a planet that doesn't have a moon? How do you base a month? Okay, what is a year? A year is a complete revolution around the sun. Well, what if you're closer or farther away from the sun? Well, time would be different there, wouldn't it? Time is a construction to keep you in a third-dimensional plane. There's no such thing as time. That's why when they say, time flies when you're having fun, even Albert Einstein said that if you go the speed of light, time changes for you. So time is not constant. So if you were to go at the speed of light, you would actually slow down time. It would bend because time technically doesn't exist. So any time travel movie you've ever seen, they're not going back and forth in time. They are actually just going to a fractal dimension. So it's another version of you. There's infinite versions of everything. So that's a little deep, but yeah. So there's no such thing as time. And like I said, I just proved it right there. Time here is based on a rotation of a planet, the distance of around a sun, and the spin of a planet. Well, if those things are different anywhere else, then time would be different somewhere else, which means time is not consistent. So it's a man-made thing to keep you grounded. Can't elevate yourself when you're staying in a lower dimensional plane. So that's you're getting a little bit more than a comic book thing. But yeah, I used to study lots of stuff about that. Let's see. Alex the Comic Hoarder says, everybody thumbs up. I appreciate that. Always appreciate anybody willing to thumb up a video. All right. And yeah, see, as soon as I scroll, all of a sudden it spikes along. So that's exactly why I want people to give, let me show this. Put it in capital letters because I want to make sure that I see it because things like that will happen. All right, let's see. And again, please make sure you put in capital letters. All right, Vintage Baloney says, can you give us a tour of your comic book room one of these days? I actually do not have a specific comic book room. I have a lot of comics in storage. A lot more of my valuable books I put in storage. So I don't have to worry about anybody trying to rob my home. So a lot of times that's why it takes time for me sometimes to do a video showing something because I go to my comic book storage facility to get some of them. So I don't have a specific room. Plus the fact that eventually we're going to move. I want to hopefully find a house where I can have a room dedicated to my comics. So I don't have a man cave right now. I just have them kind of sporadically all over. So there's nothing really to see yet. There will be. Let's see. Johnny Future says, hey Chris, just got here. Welcome. And again, if you want to ask a question, if you're just coming in now, put it in capital letters. So this way I can see it easier. Let's see. The Incorrigible Goat Slayer. I'll tell you, some of you guys come up with some interesting names. I love that. It says, I got a Fantastic Four 52 Raw in great shape, minus slight color touch on the cover, tear seal on the back, and a missing coupon for $436 after shipping. Would you recommend submitting that to CGC? Let's put it this way. I wouldn't buy that book, and I wouldn't get it graded. That's me. Whether you do it or not is up to you. That would definitely not come back a green label. It would either come back whatever grade they think it is in a purple label, or if you want a blue label, it would automatically have to come back as a 0.5. I'm not sure with all of that, with the color touch and tear seals. I mean, that's a restored book. In my honest opinion, with it has a missing coupon, so it's incomplete. It has lots of restoration, and then it depends on if it's a amateur restoration or professional restoration. In my opinion, I think you might have overpaid for that book. But again, if you like what you buy, then it doesn't matter. But that book will definitely come back a purple label. It will also be mentioned that it is incomplete. So that one, if you want a blue label, it's going to come back a 0.5, which means they will list all the problems with it as well. So if you want a blue label, the highest grade you'll get is a 0.5. Any other grade, it's going to come back as incomplete and restored. That's going to be a hard sell book. I mean, obviously, if Black Panther becomes the next, Amazing Spider-Man, even low grades you're going to sell for thousands of dollars, but I don't see that. So that one's an interesting one. I personally, if I saw that book, I try and stay away from restored books. I mean, sometimes you'll get them and you didn't know you got them. That you can't help. But people tend to kind of stay away from them like the plague. There's only two exceptions. One of them was my 0.5 Strange Tales 110. I now have a second issue, one that's not restored, and a Fantastic Four #1 that had a different back cover placed on. It had a facsimile front cover, and it was a 0.5, but I only paid like $430 for it. It's graded CGC 0.5 with a purple label. But to get Fantastic Four #1 for under $500, to me it was worth it. So in the future, I would recommend try and make deals for stuff like that. I personally would stay away from it. Some people may love it because, again, when somebody doesn't like something, it makes it easier for somebody who does, to be able to acquire it. Chad Anderson says, do you think the original Mr. Miracle is an investment book? Chad, I will say, like I always say, it always depends on the price that you pay. The reason I recommend Marvel books most of the time over DC is just the track record of the movies. DC's track record, which is basically run by Warner Brothers, their track record is not that great because even their good movies would be below par Marvel movies. People have, like, Suicide Squad was just a mess. Aquaman was okay but predictable, and they played it safe. The same thing with Shazam. It was a good movie, but again, they played it safe. It was very predictable. The acting was a little cheesy. Wonder Woman was a good movie. I would not say it was amazing, but it was definitely a good movie. Again, very safe, very predictable. So it's harder to speculate on DC books because of their movie track record. But if you find an original first appearance of Mr. Miracle for $10 and it's worth $100, you made a good investment. So it's hard to predict with DC books until they get better track record on their movies. I, as an investor, stay away from big risks. When you make risks, you also have to make risks that are intelligent. I mean, yes, is it a risk to jump off a cliff? It sure is. Is it a smart risk to take? It sure isn't. So when I say take risks, try and take the best risk possible. Not ones where you have slim to none chance. where it's an all or nothing situation, because that's when you'll tend to fail more than you'll succeed. Now, can it become a success? Who knows? But if nobody knows, and there's no real good track record as of yet, and nobody's even discussed Mr. Miracle as a movie or a TV show, the chances of it becoming a success are solely going to be based on what you pay for it. I, as an investor, would stay away from a book like that unless I got a deal that I couldn't pass up. And again, because no one's talking about it, the average person bases their purchasing and selling on what other people do. Because nobody's talking or caring about Mr. Miracle as far as relevance in a movie or a TV show, you're going to have a lot less people willing to buy it. So to me, if you want to sell something for profit, you want to sell something that people want. You'll always have somebody, but if you have a book that can have 100 bidders as opposed to one that gets one bid, well, you're going to have a better chance of making a lot more money. So to me, if you want to take risks, use smarter risks. But again, if you bought that for cover price, you can't lose regardless. So it always depends on price. All right, so I Like Donuts 57 says, how do I find out about appearances in movies before people on eBay do? Well, it's hard to say because, there are plenty of people that will make rumors just to make their channel look popular. There are plenty of websites that will do that to make their websites known, because how many speculations have we seen over the years where they didn't end up? And also, even if somebody got truthful information, things can change. So it's really hard to figure out what's BS and what's true. And even the stuff that's true may change. The contract may expire, or they decide not to make it, or they can't afford it, or the actor or actress they wanted declined to make the movie or TV show, or they ran out of money. There's so many different things. Or like with the Gambit movie, when Marvel bought the Fox properties. Disney technically bought the Fox properties. You probably won't see that Gambit movie anymore. Now, again, like I said with that, he may end up in an X-Men movie, but I don't see him doing a movie solo for a while. So it's really hard to say, but I would just say look under comic book rumors, do the effort, and then trust your instincts. But remember, even your instincts can be wrong because you have no influence on whether a movie or TV show gets done. So it's different if you trust your own instincts about something like, I feel funny about getting on this plane. That's a little different than something that you have no control over. So it's really hard to say. Lewis says, Wolverine Origins is a great film, one of my favorites. You are definitely entitled to that opinion. Channing Tatum was the person that was supposed to play Gambit. I didn't like that choice. I just don't see him as Gambit. He just seemed a little bit thicker than what Gambit is. Gambit is like a very slender kind of character whose power comes from charging his cards. Like I said, in Wolverine Origins, I don't know the actor that played Gambit, but I liked his version. It seemed more like the original of what Gambit was. And plus, I just don't see Channing Tatum doing a very southern Mississippi, Louisiana kind of accent. I mean, obviously they could try, but I just didn't see him as the character. So in a way, I'm kind of glad they didn't do it because I love these movies, but I want them to be good. I don't want people to just make movies just to make them. I mean, even the Venom movie, as okay as it was, and to me, the first hour of that movie was slow and boring because they were trying to build up the whole situation. I didn't want to really see that movie. As much as I love Venom, I mean, you can't really have a Venom movie without Spider-Man because they go hand in hand. So I think it was a mistake. Obviously, it was a cash grab for Sony to do that. But I want good movies, not just a movie. Always want quality over quantity. If you expect anything less, that's exactly what you'll get. Eric says they've done Jubilee, but more like a cameo. Yeah, they didn't really do her justice. She never got a speaking part. Alex, the Comic Quarter says Fantastic Four #1 is a great book. Has a lot going for it. I agree. That is a book I have recommended in videos before. It is definitely a key book to get and very undervalued at this point. That may change. I Have Telepathy says, so which Marvel characters are not part of the MCU? Technically, the Hulk and Hulk properties are technically not owned by Marvel. They're still Universal. Sony owns all of the Spider-Man characters. There are some, like, for example, Namor, that are kind of, it's in dispute who really owns the rights. But with the acquisition of the Fox characters, Marvel got probably about 93 to 94% of their properties back. And remember, the reason that they sold those properties is because of the comic crash of the 90s. Because remember, or you may not remember, because I was there during that time, when the comic book industry crashed, people walked away from anything comics. So Marvel almost went out of business. And to keep themselves from going out of business, they had to sell the rights to a lot of their characters. So I know there are plenty of people out there that say, oh, I would welcome a comic book crash. Well, that could bankrupt something like Marvel. It would be a lot harder now that they're owned by Disney, but Warner Brothers could be affected, and you may never see another DC movie again. So you have to think. That's why I always say, don't think about the exact moment of the situation. Think about the results of what happens, the ripple effect, the causality of something. So many people seem to forget that the comic book crash not only killed the comic books, but it also almost killed Marvel. And that's why Sony and Universal and all these other companies started buying the rights to some of the characters. Like, even at one time, Punisher was sold, but they never utilized the movie, so the rights went back. Same thing with Daredevil. So, technically, even Spider-Man is not technically part of the MCU, even though he's in MCU movies, because he's basically being leased by Disney. Sony still owns the rights to the Spider-Man and all his villains. All right, so let's see. And again, if you're just coming in, if you ask your question in capital letters, I will be more likely to see it. Michelle T says, just want to say thank you. You're very welcome. I'm glad this helps. Noah says, Reggie gave a newsstand versus direct the other day. Highly recommended. Yeah, I did a video about newsstand and direct about a year or two ago, but Reggie always does good good videos. Duskin Pilkington, and I'm sure I butchered that, says, do you think Spider-Gwen will be brought into the live-action MCU? Interesting question, because Sony owns the rights to Spider-Gwen. Now, Disney, with all the money they have, could pretty much, money buys everything. Everybody has their price. So could she end up in the MCU? That depends on if they could make a deal. Because remember, they only made a deal for Spider-Man. They would have to renegotiate contracts to make those others happen. Now, if Sony was smart, basically Marvel does all the work, and the only thing, Sony makes all the money. Because remember, Marvel's making the actual movie. But Sony gets the majority of the money made from the movie. Why does Marvel do it? Because they get the toy rights. And you can make a lot of money on the toys and all the merchandise. Because Sony does not own any merchandise rights to Spider-Man. So that's why you saw when Sony was making Spider-Man movies, Marvel was making lots of Spider-Man toys. Because they own the rights. So it's a little complicated. Spider-Gwen may or may not ever see their chance in the MCU. It all depends on if they can make a contract to do it. Now, I think you will see another cartoon version of her or computer animated version of her from Sony, like what they did with Miles Morales. And maybe Sony might do a Spider-Gwen live action. But again, it really depends on the contracts and what they're willing to do with each other. So it's all about also knowing about contract. I studied a lot of contract law as well. That's why I always tell people, even if they say something's going to get done, they will deny it up until the fact that they sign the contracts. Like, remember, up until the day before the Fox deal and up until the day before they did the Spider-Man deal, they had to deny it. Because legally, they're not allowed to say anything because it would influence stocks. And if they tried to make a stock rise, because that's what's going to happen. Marvel stock went up when they acquired Fox. Now, if they were saying all this stuff and it never happened and the prices went up and then all of a sudden they say, oh, well, the deal didn't go through, those stocks will go crashing. lot of people would be very upset and could potentially sue. So the idea is, legally, you're not allowed to say anything until a contract is signed, so people don't use that as a way to, manipulate the markets. So I would love to see Spider-Gwen in a live MCU because I love the character. And it shows that I don't have a problem with female characters. I just have a problem when they change a male character into a female character or vice versa. I wouldn't want to see, Wonder Woman being played by a man because then that's not Wonder Woman. But yet they seem to have no problem doing the reverse. It's got to go either both way or no way. You can't have it just your way. All right, so this one's interesting. Blue Marino says, what do you think of the new Batman casting? I have a video on it. I do not like it at all. I do not see that character as Batman. Now, many people had the argument of, oh, he's a great actor. I'm sure he's a great actor. But to me, I don't see him physically as Batman. And then people made the argument, well, what about the original Michael Keaton? Well, back then, the only other comic book movie was the Superman franchise in the late 70s. It was a different time. Nobody cared who would play. And even back then, they had a problem with him playing it. Because before he did that, he was playing all gimmicky kind of movies. Even people had a problem with it. But does he look like Batman? Not really. Because, if you see the comic book version of Batman, I don't see this character being played by the ex-Twilight person. Now, you could disagree. What I find interesting is how people nowadays have to hate somebody for having a difference of opinion. Just because I don't like the casting doesn't mean I'm telling you that you have to hate it too. I'm just sharing my opinion. And some people will hate you for it. I just think that's really silly and a good way to get rid of freedom of speech, which is kind of something you don't want to have happen. So I will not be watching that movie. At least I won't be paying for it because I have no interest. Now, if you do, that's great. He could probably play a very great Batman. I'm not saying he doesn't have the ability to act, but there are certain positions for certain parts. Not for nothing. You will never see Roseanne Barr playing Wonder Woman. That doesn't mean she's not a good actress. That's not Wonder Woman. So, of course, that's an extreme, but I would never want to see Pee Wee Herman play Superman. So it's just fitting the role correctly. I don't want to see Danny DeVito playing Wolverine. And actually, the funny part is they actually thought about doing that at one point. They actually considered him back in the days. Or like, for example, Nicolas Cage is Superman. They were originally going to have Nicolas Cage as Superman. Is he a good actor? Well, that's debatable. Depends on the movie. Some movies he's great. Some of them it's, what were you thinking? Like the bees all over me kind of thing. The Burning Man. That was absolutely a joke at the end. But there are other movies where he was an amazing actor. But can you see him as Superman? I sure can't. So it has nothing to do with the acting role. Superheroes are supposed to be that. Superheroes. They're supposed to look the part. And to me, this guy would have to take lots of steroids and work out incredibly just to even remotely become close. But to me, I can understand why they're doing it these days, because they want more women to pay attention. And he is an attractive young man who has a more feminine look than a masculine look. He is more a beta male than an alpha male. And they want to get more of the younger feminist movement kind of people to get into it. The funny part is most of them are not spending the money like us older generations do. So, it's all about money. I can understand why they cast him. I just, from my point of view, don't see him as Batman. Doesn't mean he's a bad actor. Just means that they put specific people to fit specific roles. That doesn't mean that they're bad people or I don't like them. I just don't like them for that part. You can disagree. All right, so Noah said Vampirella would have to be a tongue-in-cheek humor harbor. Yeah, but then, that's going to be a cheesy movie, and you're probably going to see a one-and-done film. It's not going to do it justice. That'll kind of be like a joke in a way, and that I don't want to see from that character. It wouldn't give her the justice that she deserves. All right, so let's see if we have any other questions. And I want to thank everybody, by the way, even if you're not asking questions, there's a lot of people in here. Hopefully you people are learning something from this. And again, I am selling my mystery boxes. Every now and then I will post the link if you want to get those. And also, by the way, if you make comic book videos, if you order one of my comic book boxes and you do an unboxing video, mention that in the ordering section of when you're ordering it, and I will throw in an extra book for free. Now, I am trusting that I will check, first of all, if you do have a YouTube channel, so make sure you mention what it is. And I am basing it on the honor system. So, you know, like they say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. But if you have a YouTube comic book channel and you do a live unboxing video, let me know if you order one of the mystery boxes and I'll throw in an extra comic for free. The comic will depend on which level mystery box you buy. So the link is in the description. It's also in the main title page, and I also putting it in the live chat. All right, so again, if you're just coming in, if you ask your question in capital letters, I will be able to see it. So if you didn't and I skipped it, just write it again, and I apologize. All right, so Ariel Lazo says, hey, Chris, think Teen Titans 44 will ever see a Spike? I've been hearing rumors about that character and that book since 2016. I think it, as of now, has already hit a spike. It depends on if they were supposed to use Deathstroke in a movie. Never happened. Whether it happens or not remains to be seen. And again, with the DC Universe, it's hard to say. So again, it really depends on why you're buying it and how much you pay for it. I think I have like 6 or 7 copies of that book. I paid between $25 and $45 a piece. So I could already make profit off them right now if I sold them. But that might be one you're going to have to sit on for a while. And to me as an investor, if you're going to sit on something for a while, you want to make sure it's worth it and has a good chance. Like for me, I tell people all the time to get things like Wolverine, the first appearance of Wolverine, anything, the first appearance of Fantastic Four, the Fantastic Four X-Men. Now, if Marvel's, what they say holds true, 5 years, you're going to have to sit on some of those books if that's the case, but it's going to be well worth it. So if you're going to sit on a book and have your money basically be in limbo, you want to make sure it's one where you have a better opportunity to make money on. Not everything is going to be made money on. And, you know, like I bought a PGX 2.5 Fantastic Four #1 signed by Stan Lee. As of now, a regular 2.5, now of course that's by CGC, but a regular 2.5 is worth $7,000 unsigned. I have one signed that I spent $5,000 on. Now, Fantastic Four, let's say it takes 5 years for them to come out, which means I have to sit on that money for 5 years. But once Fantastic Four is in a Marvel movie, what do you think is going to happen to that book? It's probably going to double or triple. So for me, it's worth sitting on. Something like Teen Titans 44, not so much. But because, again, I bought them years ago, and I was telling people to buy that book. If you bought it low, it might be worth sitting on. So remember, when you invest your money into something, you've basically put that money in limbo. So you have to make sure, if you're doing it for investment purposes, is it worth putting your money in limbo for the return you could get from it? And if you're not sure, you might want to stay away from it. If you get a great deal on something, then it's worth taking the chance on. So be smart with your investments. Just don't go by the flavor of the month. If you don't do your research, you're going to be burned more than you'll ever succeed. So Teen Titans 44 remains to be seen. And as of now, I don't see anything, but you never know in the future. All right, Daryl Griffin says, hey, Chris, just wanted to say thank you because of your advice. I got an Incredible Hulk 180, 5.5, very nice. Should be higher when I get it pressed, even better, for $125. That's a pretty good deal. Now, one thing I will ask, and I will also mention other people, did you check to make sure it had the Marvel stamp? Because that's very important. Certain books back in the early to mid-70s, a couple of 100 books had Marvel stamps in them, and a lot of people took them out, which would mean that book would get graded. If it didn't have the Marvel stamp, it would be listed as incomplete and would have a green label qualified. So hopefully you checked, and hopefully there is the Marvel stamp, because if you got a 5.5, even if it doesn't get higher with the pressing, you did a pretty good job with the $125 price tag. If it didn't have the Marvel stamp, You will still make profit on that book, but not as much. So congratulations on that, and I'm glad my advice helped. Scott Tisdale actually talked about the one that I didn't understand because they didn't write, that person didn't answer the question again, about the file copy. So Scott Tisdale, and this is why I love my subscribers, you guys can definitely fill in the blanks that I cannot, says file copy is used when books come up for sale that were filed by the publisher. Typically, they are also very high grade. Years ago, Gaines EC file copies appeared on the market as an example. So there you go. That's what a file copy is. And see, I learned something. I've never really seen that before, so I didn't know how to answer that question, and I don't want to give a wrong answer. All right, so Subadai, and again, if I say it wrong, please forgive me, says, are Golden Age Submariner worth getting into? I hear a lot about Silver Age. All right, I'll say the same thing. I want to make sure. If you like it, it's always worth it. And again, it depends on the price. I ended up getting 2 Golden Age Submariner books. I got issue number 6, which I paid a grand total of $4.95. I should be getting that back from grading soon. It's probably about a 2.0 to a 3.0 range. But I also have Submariner number 2. That I think it's a 2.0 or a 1.8. I don't know offhand. But I only paid $975 for that book. I've seen issues like issue 20, for example, or 25 in the 20 range, selling for $3 to $4 grand. So it always depends on the price. Now, there are rumors about Submariner being in a Marvel movie. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. Because again, like I've said before, there are plenty of rumors that may have been true, may have wanted to have happen, but didn't happen. You know, Omega Red was supposed to be in the Deadpool movie. Didn't happen. You know, they were supposed to do the not the Walking Dead, but the Fear of the Walking Dead or something like that. It was, I forget, it was a another version of it that never saw the light of day. I promoted that for a while. It never happened. So it depends. You know, there are characters like, for example, Gambit that was supposed to get a movie. New Mutants, they've been saying they've been trying to do that when it's a train wreck. So you never know. It's hard to say, but it depends on the price. If you can get a good deal, it's worth taking the chance on. If you overpay, you're taking a big risk with very little reward. So I would recommend waiting on it for a deal. If you can find a steal, pounce on it. Because, I mean, Golden Age Submariner, they're hard to get, especially in higher grades. So if you can find something that's $1,000 less than what it's worth, pounce on it. Because it doesn't need a movie to make it something that's, you know, going to make you money. If, of course, you're buying it for that reason. Gino says, thank you for answering the Atlas side of the question. You are probably correct when considering the money side of the equation. Yeah, because honestly, and this is why I tend to be more successful than failure when it comes to these books, is I think like a corporation. Corporations, like politicians, will tell you everything that you want to hear because they want to sell you something. Like, for example, the last season of Game of Thrones. Very controversial. Whether you liked it or not, I'll leave that up to you. But at the very least, people can say that it was very controversial the way it was rushed. And a lot of people didn't like it. Now, they asked the actors about it. They said good things. Do you really think they're going to trash things? Because first of all, why would another studio hire that actor if they know that person's going to trash the movie if it's bad? They have reputations. They may still be under contract. So they may not be allowed to say anything. So you have to think like a corporation. A movie will tell you that the movie, the producers and the actors will tell you a movie's great even when it's not. Why? Because if they told you the truth, you wouldn't go see it and they wouldn't make money. So businesses are not the people that are drawing the comic book characters and creating the comic book characters. The movies and things like that and the TV shows and all that stuff are funded by shareholders who probably don't know the character or don't care about the character. They just want to make money. But because most people listen to the Kevin Feiges of the world and the artists in the world and the actors of the world telling you how wonderful and great and how much they love it, of course they're going to do that because they're under contract and they want to continue to make more money making more movies. If you trash every movie you're in, who's going to hire you? But most people don't want to think that way. And because I think more from a business perspective, I can see what most people don't want to pay attention to or refuse to hear. You know, if you saw somebody put poison in somebody's drink, and I hope no one ever does it, and you go over and tell the person and they don't believe you, that doesn't change the fact that if they drink it, they're going to die. So belief is irrelevant to truth. And, you know, truth is not always lying, it's omitting the truth. That's why I always tell people, do your own research and things, and you got to think outside of what a corporation thinks. And, of course, it just did a mega scroll. It always does that, so I don't know where I left off. Sorry about that. It'll show no more questions, and all of a sudden it'll scroll like 50 questions. So, so you got to think from a business point of view. Otherwise, you're going to fail more than you succeed, because if you base it on what actors and actresses say, and you base it on the producers and the people that are trying to promote the movies and TV shows are saying, they're never going to tell you the reality of what things are, because they may not legally be able to. They could probably be sued. So why do you think, like, you ever see a review for a movie from people that got to see the movie before everybody else? You notice the reviews tend to be more positive, because if they want to be able to get the review the next time, they can't really tell you what they really want to say, or they'll sugarcoat it. So you got to think like a corporate-owned entity. Marvel is not owned by people like Stan Lee anymore. Remember, Stan Lee has been a figurehead for decades. He was as much involved in Marvel in the past 20, 30 years like Colonel Sanders is for Kentucky Fried Chicken. But people loved him. You don't think businesses took advantage of that and took advantage of him? They do it because they can make money. Oh, trust people with the suit and tie and the ones that tell you they love the comics. Those days are long gone. It's the shareholders that control it. Why do you think Disney is doing all these reboots? Do you think they're doing them because they really love them and wanted to make them better? Or do you think they're doing it because it's a quick cash grab because they know people are nostalgic and will spend money on things that they've already seen? That's why I will not go to see things like Aladdin. And I did not and have not seen the reboot for Ghostbusters. Just because I don't doesn't mean you can, but you got to think in a different way. Politicians will kiss the babies and tell you everything that you want to hear. But like they say, by their deeds you shall know them. So never go based on what people make as far as accusations or assumptions. Go based on their track record. Like I said, I have some people that make up such lies about me saying, oh, I'm a big thorn in the comic book community and I cause all these problems and I have several eBay accounts to make all these lies. Look at my track record. Does my track record suggest those things that some claim with no proof at all? So anybody can make a claim. And also somebody could make a movie seem like it's the greatest thing since sliced bread because they get paid to promote it. You don't promote a movie by trashing it. So you cannot always listen to the people that are directly involved. You got to go with the people that have no bias at all. So that's my opinion on that. And you're welcome, because that is my point of view on Atlas. I think that was a very good business decision with very low risk. Obviously, they had to spend money to do it, but they didn't have to spend as much that they could have with well-known products. So if they turn it into something that's great, they can make a lot of money off of that, and that's exactly why they did it. I promise you that's exactly why they did it. They didn't do it because they love Atlas characters. They did it because, wow, we can get into the comic book universe, we don't have to spend a lot of money, and we could turn this into a potential or hopeful gold mine. Shareholders are like, yeah, I'm on board. We'll see what happens. So the whole thing of, oh, we do it because we love it, they might even love it, but they're doing it solely for money. That's why you'll see movies like, for example, what's a good, like Batman v Superman. Where's the part 2 to that movie? It's because it was a financial disaster and people hated it. Does that mean the people that made the movie don't love it anymore? No, it's because the shareholders said we're not making another one. What's that video game movie that came out recently? What is it? With the ogres and stuff. I was never into that stuff. World of Warcraft. I really liked that movie. But because it was not a financial success, they were supposed to make a trilogy out of that. You're not going to see another movie. Did that mean they didn't love it anymore? No, is because it didn't make the money they wanted. So shareholders are what is directly influenced on what gets made and what doesn't get made. The rest of the people that are attached to it are under contract to make sure they say good things about it to try and get your money. Don't be tricked by that. That's why I say think for yourself. Do not follow the herd. All right, Archangel Love Comic. I'm just going to call you Love Comic Art, because if I try and say your first name, I'm going to totally butcher it. Says Marvel Superheroes 18 to sell or keep. I don't tell people normally what to sell when it comes to first appearances or origins or anything. The only one that I ever really recommended to sell was the Thor 390. Sell or keep, I leave that up to you. Trust your own instincts, because if I told you to sell now and then a year from now all of a sudden that book triples in price, you're going to end up being mad at me. So I know that's not the answer you want to hear, but I don't want to give wrong information. So I tell people, when it comes to selling, you sell when you think it's good time. Trust your instincts. Anybody that tells you to sell a specific book at a certain time, be very careful. All right, so Mr. Comics 89 says, my question is why all the good channels do shows during times I'm at work and can't watch them. Well, here's the thing. You can watch them anytime you want. You just may not be able to watch them live. And maybe you just need to get a better job. See, that's one of the things why I like working for myself. I can watch videos pretty much whenever I want. I have no boss to yell at me. So you'll just have to tell your boss to, give you more time or change your job. Or if anything, watch it later on. But you're here, so either you're playing hooky or you got fired or something. Hopefully that's not the case. But you're here regardless, so the good thing about videos is you could watch them years later. So I always tell people, if you can't watch it live, that's all right. If you watch it eventually. Power viewers don't have to watch it the moment it's on. So, Mr. Comics 89, you're definitely one of my ultra power viewers. So I always appreciate it. And it doesn't matter to me when you watch it, as long as you do watch it and you enjoy it. And the thumbs up will always show that. All right, so Matt Forge says, what are your rules of thumb for buying raw books on eBay? My rule of thumb is I make sure first I ask questions. I trust my instincts. I know about the book's value by looking it up. I know about the comic. I look at the pictures, and if I don't see enough pictures, I will ask them. I will always make sure that I tell people how to send the book. I don't assume they know or care about how to properly ship a book. So I do have videos that teach about my other things, like how to get your books signed properly without damaging them, how to get your books packaged the right way. I had those, and not many people have seen them, but they're under my tip and advice section. Check those out. So my rules are, make sure you know what you're buying. You can't know everything, but like, for example, the video I did just yesterday about some seller on eBay claiming a book to be a 9.8 or 9.9. If you didn't bother to look at the book, if you don't know about grading, if you don't know what the value of a book is, and you just buy it solely based on what they said, well, that's not their fault. That's your fault. I don't blame a dishonest seller. I blame the buyer for not knowing about what's wrong with the book because they didn't care or bother or know about learning about the book. Now, sometimes people will try and take advantage. You can't control that. But you can limit the damage through your own knowledge. So those are kind of my rules. Good question. All right, let's see. David says, what do you think about the Dark Avengers? There are rumors that could happen, especially if Norman Osborn ends up in the MCU in The Amazing Spider-Man. There's rumors that, there might be an end credit scene or something, or a hint to it, especially with the old Avengers Tower. They're suggesting. I thought it might be the Baxter Building, but that could be different. But they might lead eventually down that path. If they do, I see that as something 10 years down the line. I don't see that as anything in Phase 4. I see that Phase 5 or Phase 6. It also depends on if they renew the contract with Sony. If they don't get that done, the Dark Avengers could happen, but it won't be with Norman Osborn in control of it because he's the reason for the Dark Avengers. So that one is hard to say. I would love to see it, but it depends on if they can renegotiate, because they have to renegotiate the Sony deal soon. Otherwise, you won't see Spider-Man anymore. And I think that will get done. Craig Wagner says, Chris, what is your favorite book you have in your collection? I have several, but I would say the most recent one, my Fantastic Four #1. Absolutely love that book. My Edge of Spider-Verse #2, the 1 in 25 variant. I bought that raw for $96. Sent it to CGC. It came back at 9.8. I love that Greg Land cover. Beautiful artwork. My Hulk 181, because that was one of the books of mine that got stolen. So those are some of my favorite books. I mean, I always love key issue books, and I love the artistry, especially of the Silver Age. But I love good art. Like, that's why, like, that Edge of Spider-Verse 2. And it's funny, because when I bought that book, I bought that in 2016. People were laughing at me when I bought that book. They're like, you spent $96, almost $100 on the first appearance of Gwen Stacy as Spider-Girl. Or, you know, because she didn't originally have a Spider-Gwen name back then. We kind of titled that. That was supposed to be just a one-shot. And look how much that book is worth now. In a 9.8, that book is worth roughly around $2,500. So, you know, sometimes people will mock what they don't understand. I saw the potential of it. The same thing with Miles Morales. And that's why I tell people you have to have patience. You know, Miles Morales, I've been telling people since 2016 to buy that book. I bought like 12 to 15 copies at about $10 a piece. Now those books are about $100 a piece. But it took about 3 or 4 years for that to happen. So sometimes you gotta, again, I don't mind sitting on a book if it's going to be worth it. I mean, like Edge of Spider-Verse 2, another book that I have about 8 to 10 copies of. I spent between $25 and $35 a piece for them. I sent 3 of them to get graded. One came back at 9.6, the other 2 came back at 9.8. I still have the others that I haven't even graded yet. But 4 years ago to 3 years ago, that book could have been bought for under $30. Most people didn't want it. Now that book, raw, sells for about $200. But it took years. So sometimes you got to sit on books for years, and that's okay. Like I say, it's not milk. It does not expire. So when you buy low, sometimes you have to wait a couple of years. But like I said, I spent an average of $28 a piece on those books. I have about, I think, like 7 copies. 2 of them have already been graded 9.8s. I made my money back 100-fold. And I haven't even sold them yet. And she hasn't even reached the peak of her, you know, popularity. Because she is going to be in another Sony movie. And who knows, maybe she might end up in the MCU one time. And if that happens, forget it. That book will quadruple from where it is now. So don't be afraid to sit on a book. But make sure you're sitting on a book that you think has potential. All right. Richard McDowell says, suppose a comic was printed with no staples. Okay, I will suppose that. I'm not sure if that's really a question, but there are books sometimes with manufacturer errors. Some are worth more because of that. Like, for example, I have a Batman issue number 100 from it's actually the beginning of the Silver Age in 1956, graded a CGC 7.0. That is a double cover. So that book is very rare. I only know of one other book in existence that has that book as a double cover. So there might be more, you never know, but as of now, I've only seen mine and one other person's in existence. That makes it extremely rare. So sometimes you can have things like that where a book has an extra staple, or like what happened with the Naomi number 5. That's not going to increase the value of the book because a lot of them were damaged. So it's hit or miss sometimes. It's like a coin. Sometimes you have a coin that wasn't printed, stamped right. Those could be worth millions of dollars or thousands of dollars. Some of them are worth nothing. It just really depends on the situation. But since he didn't ask a question, he basically just said a statement. Suppose a comic was printed with no staples. I will suppose it. So I went a little above and beyond for that one. Connie says Robert Pattinson could make a good Gambit. I just don't see him as a superhero. I think he'd be a better Gambit than he would a Batman. But, I don't know. I guess Gambit would be a little bit more chance of being sparkly. Florence says, thank you for the butterfly, Connie. I'll say, there you go. Wild Child says, is it safer to store raw books in a short box or top loaders? Make sure if you put a comic in a top loader, it's in a bag and board. Because if you just put a raw comic in a top loader, you're not protecting it from anything. Bugs can get in, bacteria can get in, moisture can get in. Even with a bag and board, you can't really stop that stuff, because unless something is airtight, you're not really protecting it. So I hate to tell it to all the people about Mylars. Unless you vacuum seal a Mylar, when you tape over that Mylar, you're trapping in bacteria that you can't see. So the Mylar will last longer than the comic. That's why I try and tell people, don't let businesses and other people's repetition of what somebody else regurgitated dictate what you buy. Yes, Mylars are better than regular bag and boards, but they don't protect your comics as good as they make you think they do. Because again, unless something is airtight and vacuum sealed, even Mylars are going to trap in moisture and bacteria. I have a video where I showed I had a book with the double backing board and a Mylar and put it out in the sun, and it did not stop the sun from damaging the book. So be careful what you're told and what you believe. There's an old line that says, tell a lie long enough it becomes the truth. So if you're going to store something in a top loader, make sure it's in a bag and board. And it also depends on where you store it. If you store it near a radiator, or if you store it in an unfinished basement or attic where the temperature changes all the time, you're creating the ability to have moisture. Water is very damaging because it creates bacteria. You ever see mold on a comic? If it's not regular water damage, it's because somebody put it in an area where there's extreme temperatures, and that creates... You ever have a cup of coffee or an iced tea, and you see all the water forming on the glass or the cup? It's called condensation. Mylar's not going to stop that. So if you put it near an area where there's extreme temperatures of hot and cold, you can create condensation, which will create microorganisms that you cannot see, that will take years and decades to change the color of your comic and deteriorate your comic. Mylars don't save that. So you're spending extra money on something that makes the book look shinier, which again is actually very misleading to when you're buying on eBay, because a lot of people, there's a reason why they put the books in Mylar, because it makes them look a lot nicer. So that's why I don't spend all that money on Mylars. Yeah, they look nice, and yes, they'll last longer than a regular bag and board, but I promise you, the comic will be sawdust in 100 to maybe 500 years. The Mylar will be perfect. There are plenty of people going to hate me for saying that, and that's perfectly fine. Your feelings and opinions have nothing to do with truth. Comics are made of paper, so unless you vacuum seal them, the Mylar does nothing but make them last 25 years more. And for the price you have to pay for them, especially if you have a collection like me that is 35,000 comic books, if you're going to spend your money on Mylars, I'd rather spend money on more comics. So most people do it because then they don't have to change the boards. Which, by the way, I have books that I've had still to this day in the original bag and boards that I bought them in back in the late 80s and early 90s, and I've had them graded, and they came back anywhere from 9.2s to 9.6s. And remember, you could buy a book off the shelf today, it doesn't guarantee a 9.8, because as soon as somebody touches it or a corner bends, there goes your 9.8. So if you're going to put it in a top loader, make sure it is in also a bag and board, because you're basically just leaving it out to the elements, and it serves no purpose. Because remember, Golden Age books, there are plenty of books. I showed a Golden Age book just last week that was a 7.0. That's 40 years before a bag and board ever existed. People would put them in their drawers or in the closets or on the bookshelves or what have you, and they are still books that are 9.0s from the 40s and 50s, before bag and boards. So Mylars are not what people think they are. And again, people will hate me for that. That's one of the reasons why I started getting hate from my original channel, because people don't want to hear the truth. They want to believe their own system without basing it on anything other than what they heard, see, or feel. If you base things on that, you will never learn a thing. So I know there are going to be people going to hate me for that. That's fine. So just be wiser with your money. All right, so Chris Caliber says, which book out of your collection is your favorite and why? I actually already answered that question. Hopefully you heard that. But yeah, my Fantastic Four #1, my Hulk 181. Those are books that are my favorites. My Edge of Spider-Verse 1 in 25 variant, because I love that Greg Land cover. Absolutely beautiful artwork. Let's see. Don Dizzle says, "What's up, everyone?" And Raul said approximately in 1985, Marvel almost went bankrupt. Yep, that was pretty much due to what was going in the comic book industry and where it was headed. Wild Child says EGX is a new USA company for grading. Yes, but at this point, they're way too early, and there's a lot of problems with them. I actually talked to the owner at one point, gave them lots of advice. They chose to no longer talk to me because of it, and that's fine. They're way too overpriced. No one's going to... If you're going to spend money on a company, are you going to spend more for one that's not trusted, or are you going to spend less on someone that is trusted? So business-wise, I can understand why they have to charge it, but why are you going to... Let's put it this way. If you drink soda, which I don't recommend you do, and I haven't done in years, because if you learn about soda, you'll learn that you shouldn't be drinking it. But would you spend $1 for a can of Coke or $5 on a can of supermarket brand cola? You would be foolish to spend more money on something that is less known and of less quality. That, to me, is what EGS is. I'm not saying they're a bad company, but what I'm saying is their business strategy, and again, I can understand why, because they're not making a lot of money, so they have to try and compensate by overpricing, but their overpricing is going to knock them out of existence, because CGC is the #1 company. They're going to charge you about an average of about $18 for a modern book. PGX is, because they're not as popular, only going to charge you about $12 to $15 for that same comic book to be graded. EGX is charging more than CGC. So if you are a company that, a person that wants to grade your comics, are you going to go with the less expensive, more well-known grading company, or are you going to go with the one that you don't really know, doesn't have a reputation, and is going to charge you more and is not established in the business world yet? It's just common sense. So I tried to talk to the owner and gave him lots of referrals. I told him, lower your prices and do like other things that can add to it. Like, for example, I said, like what I did with PGX, charging $5 for the greatest notes is a way to make a little bit extra money to compensate for the lower price, which means less profit, but you'll make sales. That's why things like Sam's Club and Costco, they sell things for cheaper because they sell more of it. So if you're selling something for a higher price and they're not really well established, they're not going to make money and they're going to end up going out of business. I've seen it so many times in the DJ world where people will buy a bar and they will spend no money on advertising, thinking that all I have to do is open up a business and open up the doors and people will flood in. It's just not going to happen. And that's why I lose DJ business job after DJ job. It's not because I don't know what I'm doing. It's because the bars, they spend money on buying alcohol, but they don't spend money on advertisement to get people to drink their alcohol. So businesses don't really, that's why a lot of businesses fail. All right, so Jay Moy says, so for historical key like AF-15, Fantastic Four #1, Showcase 4 is well presented at 5.5 better than a non-presenting 1.0, even for long-term value. I mean, that's basically, it depends, like beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Most people are going to value it based on the actual grade, not how it presents. But you'll get some that will say, I will spend more on a lower grade that looks better than one that's trash. It depends on the person. Some people are going to be strict with the actual numerical grade value, and some will go by presentation. So it's hard to say. But books like the ones that you mentioned, they're books that no matter what grade it is, people are going to want them. I mean, look at like something like Amazing Fantasy 15. There are people willing to spend anywhere from $300 to $1,000 for one page. So when it comes to super mega key books like that, it really doesn't matter. It's just personal preference. You can't go wrong with any of them. It really depends on the price. So he says also, thanks for taking the time. Love the channel and content. Thank you. Mastodon Comics says, hello, Chris, in chat. People say hello back. Let's see. And again, if you're writing a question Please, if you can, write it in the form of capital letters, so this way I can see it. Raul says, I don't hate you, Chris. Well, I'm very happy to hear that. I don't hate you as well. We need more of that, more love. I mean, to me, you don't always have to agree with somebody, but hating somebody for having the right to their own opinion is just ridiculous to me. And there are some people in this quote-unquote community that get all rear-end hurt because somebody else thought of a different way than they do. I mean, really? Is egos that strong that you can't value somebody's right to an opinion? You know, few bad apples can spoil the tree, but they'll never spoil my tree again. Let's see. Vintage Bologna says, you'll never see Tony Curtis doing Macbeth. There you go. Prime example of what I was saying before. That doesn't mean Tony Curtis is a bad actor. It just means that he would not be the perfect role to play Macbeth. So, you know, some people, they just get way too personal when it comes to things like, oh, I like an actor so they can play anything. No. I mean, look at Ben Affleck. He did a pretty good job with Batman considering the writing that they gave him. And that's the reason why he quit, because they just made him look foolish. But he didn't do as well as the version, you know, he didn't do a good job with Daredevil. So, depends on the actor and the job. Doesn't mean they're a bad actor. Sometimes it could be a bad part for a specific actor. People just read into it sometimes. All right, so let's see. Nicolas Cage was great as Big Daddy. All right, that's from earlier. Luckily, I saw this, but it wasn't in capitals. But Michelle T says, do you think that Farmhand will get a series or a movie? At this point, anything's possible. There are plenty of people that will buy the rights to a comic book, but they never end up seeing the light of day. So, in the grand scheme of things, if I had to put a percentage of the chances of Farmhand getting a TV or a movie, I would say less than 10%. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but, you know, there are many TV shows that end up being made, and they're not that great, or people don't care about them. You know, Cloak and Dagger. How many people are watching that right now? You know, some people may love it, but it's not, you know, the TV show of the year. So it depends. It's very hard sometimes to tell with these minor characters. That's why I try and stick with more of the sure bet, because you have a better chance with the sure bet. If you're going to take a risk on an unknown property or entity, you better make sure you know as much about that as you can, and you better make sure you get it as a low price as you can. So with me, Farmhand, it's not anything established. If you asked anybody out in the real world, Farmhand, they think you're talking about some farmer. They're not going to know what you're talking about. That should tell you everything you need to know. The average person knows who Superman is. The average person is going to have no clue what you mean by Farmhand. They're going to look at you crazy when it comes to a comic book. So as far as me and as an investment, unless you bought it for cover price, I would stay away from stuff like that. But that's my opinion. You could be totally different and opposite of that. All right. Gerald Marquez, and again, if I said the name wrong, please forgive me, says, do you think prices for first appearance of Gambit are going to drop? If he ends up not having his movie or in any movies at all, because of the fact that most people these days base things on emotion and what other people do, I would see a drop in that. I don't see a major drop because it's still a good comic. And once it gets to a certain level, people like me, like for example, if the average price of a first appearance of Gambit, and I'm talking about his first full appearance, the whole debatable thing about the quote-unquote cameo, I'm not talking about it, but I'm talking about his first appearance in X-Men. If the average price was about $100, and all of a sudden I saw it drop to like $60, people like me and others would start buying them up, which would stabilize the price and bring it up again. Because anything that drops that has some kind of value will reach a certain plateau and then change directions. Same thing with the price going up. The key thing is sticking with comics that you know, like Wolverine. That, to me, is almost a sure bet. It's just a matter of when, not if. Same thing with Fantastic Four. Same thing with Deadpool. But you're going to see lulls because people are so worried about what I call the flavor of the month, and they worry about what everybody else is telling them they should love. Don't let anybody tell you what to love. You love what you love, even if everybody else hates it. Because the good thing about if everybody hated what you love, less competition, which means you can get it for a lot cheaper. So I think there might be a little drop in the price, but it will stabilize, and at a certain point it'll get to a low point where buyers will say, I can't pass up buying it, and it'll stabilize. So it really depends on what they do with the movie. if they make a movie. But even without a movie, certain characters are going to have desirability. That's why, even though there is no movie for a Gambit right now, it's not a dollar book. Depends on the character. Let's see. Gary Hahn says, what about, not Grenade, but Grendy, Comico Primer 2? That's a book, me personally, unless I had some really inside information that they were going to make a movie about that person, unless you bought that cheap, I wouldn't waste my time with it. That's just me personally. If you love the character, then again, it doesn't matter. But that to me is a very high risk, low reward. And as an investor, I would stay away from something like that. You know, that's like buying a penny stock. You know, you're going to fail more than you're going to succeed. You know, it's like nickel slots at a casino. Yeah, that's why you see mostly 90-year-old people playing the nickel slots, because, you know, it's not a lot of money, but you're not going to win $10 million on the nickel slots. You might win $20 at best. So to me, as an investor, high risk, low reward, not worth it for me. I'd rather send the money on something else. You know, never hurts to take a chance, but make sure you're informed. Aaron Reference says, any comments on Captain Britain, Marvel Team Up 65? There are rumors that Captain Britain could appear in a Marvel movie. Again, it really depends on if it happens. It always depends on price. I'll say that all the time. It doesn't matter. Like, for example, you could buy Action Comics #1. If it's valued at $1 million and you spend $5 million, well, guess what? You overspent, and you're not going to make your money back for probably long time. So I cannot stress enough, it always depends on the price that you pay for something. All right, let's see. Again, it's scrolled. Now I got to find my place again, so I apologize, but that's YouTube. Okay, we're somewhere around here. And again, if you want to ask questions while we're live, and don't forget, if you're kind enough to give it a thumbs up, it shows that you guys appreciate what I'm doing. So anybody that could take the time to give it a thumbs up, I really appreciate it. If you share this, let people know on the social network this is live, because like I said, I'll go as long as you guys want. I have until 6 o'clock. Okay, so Daryl from a question early says it has the Marvel stamp. That's the first thing I checked. Good job. Never assume, because like I said, there's a video that I did about a week or two ago about a Hulk 180, and they said that the Marvel stamp was in it in the auction. And it ended up, because I checked, and I always check, it ended up that they lied. The Marvel stamp was not in the book. And they even showed a picture of the stamp, which means it wasn't the book that I bought. So don't assume that just because they show a picture and they say something doesn't mean that they made a mistake or they lied. Because not everybody's a liar. Sometimes there are people who sell comics who know nothing about them. But it's your responsibility to know what you're buying. So if you don't check, is that the seller's fault, even if they lied? Because if you checked, you can avoid the situation by getting your money back. If you don't check, that's your fault. So I'm not saying any one person specifically, obviously. Chris Caliber says, which side of the board do you place against your book? It is the shiny side. I actually have a video about that. But it is the shiny side. If you're not getting the more expensive backing boards and you're buying just the generic ones, you'll have one side that's dull and one side that's shiny. I did research on this. I did a video about this about a year and a half ago. It is the shiny side you want facing the comic. So whether you want to dig into as of why, you can either watch my video or do some more research, but it is the shiny side. So that debate has been answered a while ago. Sith Lord says, hello, he made it here. Mastodon Comics says, just like John Carter didn't bring it at the box office, no more movies. Exactly. But I guarantee you, the actor who played John Carter was promoting the living daylights out of it. I'm sure Disney was promoting the daylights out of it, telling you how amazing it was. But because box office-wise, it financially didn't make the money they wanted, there are no more John Carter movies. They will lie to you because that's what they do to get your money. If they told you, if politicians and corporations and movies and actors told you the truth, you wouldn't spend half the money you spend. So keep that in mind. They will lie to you because they want your money. If they told you the truth, you wouldn't want to hear it. Look how much hate I get for talking about things like Mylars and making my opinion about actors and corporations. Most people don't want to hear the truth, so they'll hate the messenger instead of actually paying attention to the fact that I'm trying to help you save money. It doesn't affect me whether you buy a Mylar or not. If you want to spend 10 times the amount on something that will protect the comic book for an extra week or two and makes it look shinier, then by all means, please do. As a matter of fact, because the Mylars are so stiff, you actually have a higher chance of damaging your comic trying to get the darn thing in the bag. I actually had that happen. Because the regular bag and boards actually have more give, so they bend. But those really thick Mylars, they have no give. It's almost like plastic. So if you have a corner that gets stuck as you're putting it in because you didn't pay attention, there goes your comic. You could actually even rip it. I've seen it happen. But, to each their own. But many people base things on emotion and what other people say. Like I've said, for the majority of this planet, most people were told, by the church, by the way, that the world was flat. So the majority of people just regurgitated what somebody else said. Don't be a follower. Be a leader. And again, I'm not saying that to anyone specifically. Steven Spock says they should do a Lobo movie. I would love to see it, but only as a rated R movie. If you do a PG-13 version of it, it's like Deadpool. It will not work. Lobo is a very, he rips people to shreds. If they would not be able to do Lobo movie justice with a PG-13 or a PG movie. It would have to be rated R. I would love to see a Lobo movie, but again, it would have to be it would have to be almost like somebody like The Rock or somebody like Arnold Schwarzenegger, not anymore, but it'd be a very thick, strong person. I don't want to see like when they tried to do the Convergence, new change of Lobo, where he looked like somebody that could have sang for NSYNC. Yeah, that's not Lobo. So, again, it would really depend on the character. I would love to see a Lobo movie, but if they hired somebody like Daniel Patterson to play Lobo, I ain't watching it. Quality over quantity. All right, so Timothy Metter says, love the channel, Chris. Great substance and content. Thank you. I appreciate that. And, again, I'm selling my mystery boxes, so I do want to mention that. I did put the link. I'll put the link in again. It takes you to my business website. You'll see like pyramids and crystals and stuff in my massage business. That's my website. I did that so it makes it easier. People can pay by PayPal if they want. I have the address to my PayPal in the description as well. And again, if you have a YouTube channel, a comic book channel, and you tell me when you order it that you're going to do an unboxing video with my comic books and the mystery boxes, let me know when you order it. And I will throw in an extra comic for free as a thank you, because it does help promote my channel as well. So let's see. Vintage Bologna says, my wife suggested Matthew McConaughey as Gambit. 10 years ago, I would have said that was a good choice, but he's just too old to play that part. So I think she was joking, and she might have a crush on him. I don't blame her. He was an attractive man, but he's in his 50s at this point. That's why, you're never going to see Hugh Jackman as Gambit again. As ex-Wolverine again, unless it's like a cameo or Old Man Logan again, because he's just too old. And that's why I really don't think they're going to wait 5 years for Deadpool, because the actor who plays Deadpool is 42 right now. You can't wait 5 or 6 years when the actor's in his 50s, because how many more movies are you going to make? And again, because they care more about money than the love that we have, they're going to fast track certain things with certain actors, because right now there's only one person that can play Deadpool. If they replace him, it's not the same thing. It's like what they tried to do with Aladdin. Nobody can play the genie other than Robin Williams. Now, I'm sure Will Smith did an okay job, but that's you can't. No one's replacing Robin Williams, so they'll have no chance. They'll have to bring Deadpool in faster than 5 years. This, in my mind, it would be a very unwise business decision. All right, so again, please write in capital letters, otherwise I might miss it. Luckily, I didn't miss this. Timothy Metter says, hello, Chris. X-Men #1, Fantastic Four 48, or Hulk 181, better investment. Depends on price. You can't go wrong with any of them. If everything was the same, if the value was same for all three, of the three, I would say X-Men #1 would be the best choice. I would go if I went, again, all things the same. If the price of value of each book was the same price, I would go X-Men number 1 Hulk number 181 2, and Fantastic Four 48 3. Because the X-Men started it all, and there would be no Wolverine without X-Men. Fantastic Four number 8 does have the cameo of Galactus and the first appearance of Silver Surfer, but he's not as popular as Wolverine. So, of the 3, I would get X-Men number 1 first. But again, it depends on the price. If you can't afford an X-Men number 1 and you can't afford a 181, Fantastic Four 48 is going to be the cheapest option of those 3. I would go with those. So it depends. Hulk 180 is also a good one. You can't go wrong with that because that is the first appearance of Wolverine. It is a cameo, but it's still the first time he ever appeared. So, John Valenzuela says, "Hey Chris, do you like Bronze Age horror? I technically really don't like any horror. I was never into the horror kind of thing genre. I never even liked horror movies because if I wanted to watch people murdering each other, I could just go on the news. So I never really got into horror. I was more into fantasy, more into comedies. So any age of horror I really didn't really focus on. Walking Dead you can consider horror, but that's a different kind of horror. And again, it's just an exception, not the rule for me. Let's see. Again, please try and write them in capital letters so I see them. But Frederick82 says, who is your favorite artist between Alex Ross or Gabriel Dell'Otto? Of the two, Alex Ross, absolutely. Both have great artwork, but Alex Ross's is just, it's like the difference between a Ferrari and a Lamborghini. But Alex Ross is the better artist. Not saying anything bad about Gabriel Dell'Otto, but in my opinion, I think Alex Ross is just the best artist as far as detail is concerned. He may not be the most popular, but as far as actual artwork, some of his stuff looks like actual pictures. When you could do that, you're a great artist. Gabriel's has that kind of same lifelikeness, but his is a little bit easier to tell it's a painting. Again, great artwork from either one. Okay, so Steven Spock says, hey Chris, I need a cover for Amazing Spider-Man 101. Can you help? Don't happen to have a spare 101 cover, but eBay, there are times where people will sell covers for books. So if you type in Amazing Spider-Man 101 cover only and save that as a favorite, anytime somebody lists something like that, you will get notification. So what you can also do is maybe buy a really low grade of that cover. But remember, if you ever get it graded, it's going to come back as a married cover. So that's technically, I don't know if they consider that restoration or not, but it is mentioned. All right, so John said about the Bronze Age horror, do I like? No, I do not, but that's just me. Nikki Gogol says, have you seen the Swamp Thing trailer? Feeling on his key books. I was telling people to get the first appearance of Swamp Thing, which is House of Secrets 92, for a long time, even before they were getting a movie deal, because that's such an iconic cover. Which, by the way, Man-Thing came before the Swamp Thing. So that's one of the times where DC actually copied off of Marvel. That has happened from time to time. Same thing with Aquaman and Namor, Prince Namor, the Submariner. Submariner actually came out before Aquaman. But I saw the trailer. Looks pretty good, but I've also learned, thanks to movies like The Suicide Squad and many others, trailers are one thing. The show and the movie is completely different. So I haven't seen the first episode yet. I don't know if it's out yet. But it has potential, and it may be one of the few DC shows that I'm actually interested in watching. For some reason, I just never got into the DC shows, but that one actually looks like something I'd be interested in seeing. So it looks like they're staying true to the character. All right, so Timothy asks again about X-Men number 148 and all that other stuff. Again, it depends on your money. It depends on the grade. You can't go wrong with any of them. Like I said, that's like a Ferrari, Lamborghini, or a Porsche. If you have the money to afford any of them, you're not really going to go wrong. It goes by own personal preference. But if I had the choice of the three, if all things were equal, I would go X-Men number 1 first. Because, it's X-Men number 1. All right, so Jerry P says, hey, Chris, way late. Well, better late than never. Have No Fear Comics says yes. Yeah, don't buy Mylars. I mean, people can buy them. I'm not going to stop somebody from buying them. You know, if you want to spend extra money on something that really doesn't do much extra to protect your book, because people don't seem to understand that just because you can't see bacteria and moisture and, you know, microscopic organisms doesn't mean they're not there. Mylars do not protect from things that are microscopic. Learn something from Ant-Man. So, but, you know, if you want to spend your money because other people told you to spend your money, you know, by all means, please do. And some people are going to hate me for it because they've been spending their money on Mylars thinking they're the greatest thing when they didn't stop and think that they're not airtight. So they're not stopping anything in the air from getting into the book and destroying the book. And plus, if you have a Mylar and you spend money on the double back backing boards and you put it next to a heater or you leave it in the basement, moisture's going to get involved. It's just going to take a little bit longer to affect it. So, to each their own. Lobo would be awesome, says Ron Montana. Depends on the writer and it depends on the actor. The character, yes, would be awesome. But there's been many movies where the character is awesome, but the movie or TV show was not. So it depends on the writer, it depends on the actor, it depends on the money they're willing to put into it. Mike Dance says, hi, Chris. What Atlas Comics do you think will have a movie first? Funny you should say that. I made a video last week on that. I will refer you to that. I gave my predictions. Now, remember, they don't even know what they're going to be doing yet. So it's hard to do anything other than speculate. So keep that in mind because the company who bought the rights to those have said publicly they don't even know which ones they're going to do yet. So my thing is, take a chance on all of them. Some will be hits, some will be misses. But if you bought the misses at $5 and the hits become $500, well, you won more than you lost. So take the chance on all of them because even they don't know at this time. But if you want to check the ones that I recommended, go check out the video I did. It was only a couple of days ago. Rob Montana says they should bring the Hobgoblin into a Spidey movie. They absolutely will not do that before the Green Goblin. And probably would be a while before the Hobgoblin because that might confuse the average moviegoer. Remember, not everybody that watches comic book movies is comic book collectors. So if you add too many different things that the average person may not know, that can confuse them. Because I promise you, as good as Endgame was, if you didn't know about comic books and you watch that movie by itself, you are going to be lost. So as good as Endgame is, in 20 years from now, nobody's going to really understand that movie because that movie is based on all the other movies beforehand. So somebody that watches that movie without seeing any other movies and not knowing anything about the characters would have no idea what it meant when Steve Rogers picks up Thor's hammer or when Falcon says, on your left. They would have no idea what that reference is. If you didn't watch Captain America the Winter Soldier in the beginning where they were running around in Washington, D.C., and every time that Captain Rogers circled around Falcon, he kept saying, on your left, you're not going to know what that reference is. So, going to be hard to say when it comes to movies. All right, so I don't see Hobgoblin. I would love to see him, but I don't see it for a while if they were going to do it. There's too many other villains that would be much better. I would love to see Venom in a Spider-Man movie. I mean, can we get a good Venom in a Spider-Man movie? That I would love, and I guarantee you most people would love that. But yeah, Hobgoblin, but not for a while. They'll do Green Goblin way before they do Hobgoblin. Let's see. Lucido Balbine says, what do you think about rebooting the Uncanny X-Men? Marvel has a great track record. I really think they're going to do it justice. I hope so. I hope they stay away from the SJW type of way they're kind of going. I mean, as much as I love Spider-Man, Homecoming has a lot of SJW stuff that kind of takes away from the movie. I really hope they stop that stuff and stop killing the golden goose. They're poisoning it right now, but the good thing is you can change the diet and fix it. So it depends on what they do, but you know, Marvel's track record is pretty good. I give them a good chance, but we'll have to wait and see. Dustin Pinkton says, what do you think of the odds of Gwenpool in movies? I already actually talked about that in this very video, so scroll back later on, you'll see that. I would love to see it, but probably won't be for a while. Okay, Natasha says, just made it, just tuning in, welcome. All right, Rob Montana says, do you think Fantastic 445 is a good buy first Inhuman appearance. At this point, you missed the opportunity. I don't know if they'll ever bring the Inhumans back. But again, if you like the Inhumans, it's a good buy, and it depends on the price that you pay for it. As far as speculation for an Inhumans in a movie, Quake is an Inhuman, and they don't even refer to her as an Inhuman in the TV show anymore. So as far as an investment, most people miss the opportunity. But again, if you find Fantastic Four 45 for $50 and it's worth $100, it's a good buy. If you're looking at it for a future, you missed out, most likely. But that can change. There's just too many new things introduced in the MCU for them to go back to something that they canceled that didn't work. I just don't see that. And if they do, I don't see it for another 15, 20 years. So if you're in your 50s, stay away from that book unless you get a steal. Let's see. War Panda Gaming says, sorry I'm late, didn't get a notification. Now that's typical YouTube. Let's see. And again, if you're just coming in, if you want to ask a question, please do it in capital letters so I see it. Natasha Vanilla says, can I ask this question here? Yes. No, I'll leave it at that. Now let's read the rest. Does a miswrap cover of influence the grade or price of a book? It absolutely does. Some it could be worth more. Some it could make it worth less. It depends on the situation. If it was a miswrap due to manufacturing defect, how bad of a miswrap? Does it make pages, disappear or get ruined? So it's not an easy question to answer because it depends on the miswrap. And remember, something like a miswrap sometimes can be pressed out. So it really depends on the situation. So hard to say specifically. All right, so let me see. I don't see any more questions, so if anybody else wants to ask any more questions, if I get one within the next couple of minutes, I'll answer it. Otherwise, we'll end the video here. I have posted my link several times about my mystery comic boxes. If you're interested in those, hopefully you'll at least check them out. There is another question right here. Tyler Lewis says, what are your thoughts on Spider-Woman? I was telling people to get that book. Again, that's another book back in 2016. I was telling people to buy Marvel Spotlight 32. I was buying them when I could buy them for $20 or less. I think I have a graded 7.0 that I spent maybe $50 on. They've already talked about Spider-Woman as far as the character, Jessica Drew, in the next Spider-Man movie, but not as Spider-Woman. Whether she becomes Spider-Woman or not depends. It could be just an Easter egg where they have a woman that just happens to be the name of Spider-Woman. So hard to say in definite terms, but again, if you bought it years ago and you paid low prices, it's worth taking the chance on. With the fact of them using a lot of women characters these days, it increases the chances. So Spider-Woman will technically be in a Spider-Man movie, just as of now, not as the actual hero, but the name of the actual character who may or may not become Spider-Woman. So it remains to be seen. Joseph Sims says, what's up with the X-Force books? Why they are not taking off after the Deadpool movie? Well, the reason is Deadpool 2 was not as good as Deadpool 1, so that was a little disappointing. There haven't been any talks about a new an X-Force movie. The way they did X-Force in Deadpool 2, I did not like. They built it up like they were creating the X-Force. It ended up being a farce and a joke. So that would definitely lower it. And because most people don't buy things based on speculation of what they love, they base it on what other people say. Most people are not liking what happened with X-Force and what happened with Deadpool. And because there's so many other, what I like to call flavors of the month, they're not paying attention to it. That's sometimes a good buying opportunity. So the books went down because basically Deadpool 2 was not as good as it could have been. It seemed more of a money grab than an actual passion piece. So that will affect the books because most people buy things because of demand. Like I say all the time about Thor 390. Most people did not buy that because they liked it. If they did, they would have bought it years ago. People were spending up to $100. One of my subscribers said they took my advice when I told them to sell that book because it's one of the few times I told people, sell that book. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And they told me they sold it for, I think, $127 or $137. It was one of the two. There's no way that will ever reach that halfway point ever again, because that book is not even worth a quarter of that now. So most people will base things on emotion, and that's why they lose money more than they make money. So that's why X-Force books are going down, but it could be a buying opportunity. That's why I was telling people the other day, New Mutants 98 would be a great book to buy now that the price dipped a little bit, because you're getting an opportunity. Peter Connor says, I missed you answering my question about dry cleaning. It's probably because I missed it. It may not have been in capital letters. I got so many people writing, it's hard to say. So if you don't write it and see what I mean, I just went to scroll and all of a sudden it just moved all over the place. So that's why it can happen. But he says, dry clean, what is it best for? Dry cleaning is good for getting off dirt and little imperfections. It's not going to get rid of ink stains. It's not going to get rid of major water stains. But it can help with like a little bit of the foxing and the dusting, and maybe a little bit of like mold or anything like that, like things like that, because it eats paper. It's not going to get rid of it completely, but if it makes it look a little bit nicer, it's definitely worth it. It can bring the grade of a book, depending on the situation, up a grade or two. And now you're talking, it'll cost like $15 to $18, maybe $20 to have a book dry cleaned, depends on where you get it dry cleaned. But if you go from a 1.0 to a 1.5, that can increase the book by $100 or $200 depending on the book. So it's always worth it to get a book pressed and dry cleaned if it's a valuable book and it can be improved by it, because you'll make so much more money if you're buying it for the investment purposes. Which most people, if you're going to press and dry clean it, it's probably why you're doing it. Most people that are having their own personal collection probably want to leave the books the way they are. But again, people are different. All right, Miguel Candelaria says, do you recommend to buy Batman Damned 1? Let's put it this way. It should not matter what I recommend. If you like it, you should buy it. Don't overpay for that book, because there was a hype that you could see is going in a downward trend. If you're buying it because of the hype, you're going to be disappointed and you'll probably overspend. Would I buy that book right now? No. If I found it for $20, would I buy it? Yes. I wouldn't spend $100 on that book. It's just, in my opinion, other than the fact of the Batwang, there's nothing about that book other than the controversy that made it special. So, do I recommend it? No. But does that mean you should not buy it? No. If you love it and you want to own one, then buy it. If you overspend, then it still makes you happy. As long as you're happy, that's the important thing. That's what Mark G says, thank you for responding and appreciate your message. My pleasure. Tyler Lewis says, thanks for your opinions. And keep in mind, these are just my opinions. You don't have to agree, and here we go again. And you may not like them, but they're my opinions. So if you're asking me a question, I may not tell you what you want to hear. But if you're asking me, I'm going to tell you what I thought. So thank you for appreciating that. And I hope people will favor this and share it and thumb it up. And subscribe if they haven't. Let's see. Aaron Raffanan says, any comments on Alpha Flight? Is it a good spec? I wouldn't bet the farm on it. And again, depends on the price you pay for it. I don't see Alpha Flight happening anytime soon, but that doesn't mean it might not happen. It's again, high risk, low reward, because it's not going to be your Amazing Spider-Mans and your Fantastic Fours and your X-Men kind of book. Alpha Flight it was in, I think it was X-Men 121 is the first Alpha Flight. But who knows? It may happen, but it's one that's not up there as, the top spec books. But if you can get it for a cheap price, it might be worth taking the chance on. So again, and I'll keep reiterating, it always depends on the price. Don't overpay for a spec book just because you're hoping it'll work out. That's why, like with those Atlas comics, I spent an average of $8 on those books. Some people probably got them in the 50-cent bins. I just don't want to travel all over the place and waste the gas and time to do it. Because especially here in New York, dollar bins, you're not going to find anything. If it doesn't work, I didn't spend a lot of money. But if it does work, I will get a greater reward than loss from the risk of failure. And that's how you have to formulate your investments. Is the risk worth the wait and the chance? Is the failure going to damage you in a very bad way? You got to think that way. So, do I recommend Alpha Flight when it comes to a movie? No. Does it mean that it can't happen? Of course not. It can happen. If you buy it for cover price, you spend $20, $50 less than what it's currently valued, then you're taking a good chance. I would not overspend for that book. I would not pay current value for that book. And that's, again, just my opinion. All right, so Josh Andrew Arthur says, thoughts on Moon Knight? That book is pure speculation. People have been speculating since I have been in comic book YouTube channels back in 2015. People are really wanting Moon Knight. I'm one of those people. I would love to see Moon Knight done. I think Moon Knight would be better off as a TV show than a movie because, again, outside of the comic book community, most people do not know anything about Moon Knight. And a 2-hour movie, an hour-and-a-half movie, even a 3-hour movie would not be enough time to get people to understand and make a good movie because you'd spend probably, in a 2-hour movie, you'd spend probably good 40 minutes trying to get people to know who he is. So I think it would be better off with a TV show. Now, of course, it would have to be a good TV show, but that book, the reason why that's so expensive, they've been speculating on that for years. So who knows if it's ever going to get done, but I hope they do a TV show. Now, that doesn't mean they can't later on do a movie, but again, you have to remember, you have to think like a business person. We as comic collectors mostly know who Moon Knight is. Ask the person on the street about it, they'll have no idea what you're talking about. So you have to think from a business perspective. Do you think they can make a lot of money on a character that most people don't know about? Now, Marvel could make some money on it, I'm sure, but I think they'd be better off starting with the TV show, get people to understand who that character is, and then maybe bring him like as a side character to another movie, and then maybe get a solo movie. I would like to see that, but again, do it the right way. Don't just do it to do it, because then you're going to see that huge spike, and if it's a failure, it's going to drop down again, and they'll probably never do it again, like the Inhumans. You don't want it just to happen, because they did the Inhumans wrong. They killed that franchise, and now you'll probably never see the Inhumans again, which means all that money that most people spent at the top, they'll probably never see that again, and if they do, it probably won't be for decades. So if you want a Moon Knight show, make sure they do it right. Don't just have a one-shot Moon Knight movie where they just do it half rear end, and then it ends up crashes down, and nobody cares about it anymore. Quality over quantity. Make them do it right. And that's why I tell people, don't just, if a movie is bad, don't just try and nitpick one or two things that make it seem good. Don't settle for mediocrity, because that's what you'll get. Like they say, be careful what you wish for, you may get it. I want good movies. I don't want to see a bad Moon Knight movie, because then you'll never see another one. So, Michelle T, I'm sorry, your opinion of Alex Ross variants of DC 1000. I love anything Alex Ross. I just hate the fact that DC, especially for the DC 1000 books, are doing 6,000 different, covers. But I love Alex Ross. Not every one of his is a work of art, but on average, his stuff is amazing. So I like it. Some people may not. It's personal preference. Again, try and write them in capital letters, because I might miss them if I don't see it, because especially every time I scroll down, it like YouTube all of a sudden pops like 50 other statements and comments in there. And I appreciate everybody coming in, because there's a lot of people that are commenting. All right, Jerry P says, have some single digits, but your opinion on the best value to buy Amazing Spider-Man 10 through 20, excluding 14. Well, Amazing Spider-Man 15, that's a great book, because they've been talking about his character, Kraven, for a while. 10, there's no significance. 11 is just the third appearance of Dr. Ock. 19 is the first cameo appearance of Scorpion, but 20 is the one everybody wants. So 20 would be a good book to get. But of all of them, 14 is the best. So the rest are kind of, either second or third appearances of characters. But 15 would be a good one. Another one, 16 to a lesser extent, because of the crossover with Daredevil. 17 is also a good one, because it's the second appearance of the Green Goblin, but it's also the first appearance of his glider, because in 14 he rides what I call the magical broomstick, or magical vacuum. So 17 would be another great book. Since you're saying excluding 14, 20 would be the first choice, and then 17 would be my second choice. Michelle T., your opinion about Naomi #1. I would not overspend on that book. I've heard a lot of reviews that it's a bad story. It's another one of those hype books that everybody bought because everybody said to buy it. It depends on what they do with the character. It's too short of a time period. I see prices have stabled at this point. I even see the 9.8 at one point was like 400. Now it's down to like 280. So I think that's a pretty hyped book. Too early to name something as amazing as people claimed it to be. So again, if you're overspending, you're probably going to have a better chance of being disappointed. There is no guarantee. But if you are just looking to buy it now, I would be very careful about that one. That's like a 50-50 chance at best. Hard to say. If you bought it when you first came out, you're going to be very happy. It really depends on what they do with the character. So, too early to tell. All right. Mastodon Comics and Collecting says, hope this doesn't get me kicked, but Who Dat would like to know why he's blocked. Who Dat is not blocked. I wouldn't know why he's blocked, but I have no problem with Who Dat at all. I'll check into it, but I've never had a reason to block him ever. I actually had one or two people where that happened, where they said they're blocked, and I went to their channel, and they weren't. Let's do this. Let's put in Who Dat. See if it comes up. Give me a second. Of course, they're not going to... Let me try Who Dat Comics. I don't know if that's his actual channeling, because I'm subscribed to him. Okay, so Who Dat Comics... Oh, I'm not subscribed to him. Oh, I love when YouTube does this. So let me fix that. There's so many times where people tell me they're subscribed and all of a sudden they get unsubscribed. But let's go to About. Now, if you click on this, see, look, if this was blocked, see, I'll show you. If it was blocked, and I'll just block it for the second just to show. Now, if you click on this, it would say unblock. So it's not even doing that. So just so you could see, it would say unblock user. So he's not blocked. I don't know why. So have him send me a message. But yeah, I have no problem with him or his channel at all. Please subscribe to his channel. As a matter of fact, just to show, I will put the link to his channel in the description. And if anybody wants to subscribe to him, please do. So I'm not sure. It's got to be a YouTube thing. So, no, I have no problem with Who Dat at all. As a matter of fact, he used to go on my live shows when I used to be one of the earliest people that did the comic auctions. So, Who Dat, if you're there, I don't know why, but you're definitely not blocked. So, I would have no reason. But thank you for bringing that up. Try and figure out what it is. All right, let me try and find my spot. All right, Naomi #1. Okay. So, yeah, you're definitely not going to get kicked. But, yeah, I don't understand why he's blocked either. But he's definitely... and I was subscribed to him. I can't believe that it showed that it wasn't unsubscribed. Probably why I haven't seen a video of his for a while. Vincent says, hey, Chris, any word on the new PGX cases? Actually, somebody asked that earlier. So, I would recommend to rewatch this video. And I will talked about that already. Luisito... Balbin says, why did Netflix drop the MCU universe? Plain and simple, money, because Disney is going to have their own Disney Channel, which is going to be in direct competition of Netflix. So basically, in a nutshell, they got pretty aggravated about that, to use nicer words, and decided, to heck with this, I'll stop making those TV shows. Because Disney was probably going to end up not renewing it anyway, because they were going to start putting everything on their own network. So it's basically, again, a business deal. Those movies, I mean, I can understand them with the Iron Fist. I can even, to a lesser extent, Luke Cage, because I found that one kind of boring. They didn't give the potential of what that character could have been. But stuff like The Punisher and Daredevil, those were great shows. And they were definitely making money off of those, because I'm sure a lot of people unsubscribed from Netflix after they canceled those. So that was purely a business thing. And it's, I mean, obviously I'm not part of the meetings, but thinking as a company, you know, would you want your competition to be able to outcompete you, and would you want to help them after that? You probably wouldn't. So that's most likely the reason, that because Disney's going to be doing their own streaming service, which is going to compete with Netflix, why would they want to help their brand? So that's primarily what that was all about. All right, so Jerry P. also talked about file copy. If you want to read that, please do. I made this so everybody can read the comments. Jerry P. says, this is great. You can do this anytime. If I get enough likes on this, I will do it again. So if people hit the like button, the share button, and I see I got a couple of subscribers, I will definitely do this again, because I don't mind helping people if they like it. If they don't like it, then obviously I won't do it as much, but I'll do it from here and there. Mark G says, hey Chris, you think they will make a Mr. Sinister X-Men movie? At this point, it's hard to say, because they were thinking about doing that when Fox owned the property. They would be crazy not to use Mr. Sinister. I think he's a great villain. And they could definitely go a long way with that character. He's very powerful, but he can also be a grounded villain as well. Hard to say now that Disney bought the rights to the X-Men what they're going to do. But considering how cheap that X-Men comic is, and I think it's X-Men 221, forgive me if I'm wrong about that, or correct me if I'm wrong, that book you could get as a steal. You could still buy that book to this day for under $30 in mid to high grade. Now, of course, ungraded. But that's a book worth taking the chance on. Whether they do it or not, that's really up to Disney at this point. I hope they do. That's definitely a character worth checking out. Jerry P says, not seeing you, should I? Now, I made it so you can actually see the comments scrolling, because somebody, if they're watching this on like their PlayStation or Xbox, they never get to see the live chat. So I thought it'd be nice, instead of just looking at me sitting here, and it gave me an excuse to do a video while still in my bathrobe. So now you have to picture that. So aren't you glad you aren't able to see it? All right. So Craig Wagner says Batman is a dark character. Exactly. And that's one of the mistakes DC and Warner Brothers was making for a while. They started trying to make everything dark because Batman was a success. And they wanted to. That's why Superman is not a dark character. They made him dark. Why'd they do it? Because they said, wow, Batman made a lot of money, so they must have done it because everything is dark. No, because Batman fits as a dark character, and they actually did him pretty decent. Superman is not a dark character. Any reason why it didn't succeed? And that's why you never saw Superman 2, and they made Batman v Superman. Why? Because they thought the darker thing was what people wanted, and that ended up not being a success. Superman is supposed to be the Boy Scout of the DC universe. He's supposed to have the morals. He's supposed to be like Captain America. Captain America never would have done as well if they made him dark like they did with every character in the DC universe, comparing it to Batman. Batman hides in the shadows. He's supposed to be dark. He's supposed to be intimidating. That's why he dresses like a bat. He wanted to instill fear. Superman is not instilling fear. It's truth, justice in the American way. But again, because they think like corporations do, and they want to pander to the shareholders who are investing the money, they went the wrong route, and look how that went. All right, so Big Will and Michelle T ask questions that I can easily answer. Do you have a DC streaming? No, I do not. I'm not going to spend extra money on that stuff. Michelle T says, do you have an Instagram profile? I do not. I do not have a Twitter account. I do not have Instagram. I find they are more trouble than they're worth. That's why I could spend more time doing videos like this and answering everybody's comments, because I just focus on my YouTube channel. Even my Facebook page, I'm hardly ever there. So if your best chance to get in touch with me is here. So yeah, I don't want to spread myself all over the place, because then it's more work than fun. And I don't want to give up. I want quality over quantity. So I don't have, nor will I ever have, an Instagram profile. So it makes it easier to get in contact with me. Mastodon Comics and Collecting says, when is the last time you went live this long? Back in the days when I had my original channel, I used to do videos that were 8 hours long. I used to invite anybody who wanted to come on my channel. I used to do the live auctions. I was one of the first ones to do the live auctions, at least for a long time. And I used to not make any money. I wouldn't sell any of my books. I just promoted the people. But then, unfortunately, a few people took advantage and they backstabbed me and everything. And those are the ones that made all these lies and rumors about me. So I stopped doing those videos. But I used to do on average, and I used to get like 1,500 people that would watch the live shows. Because a lot of them like the drama. And I took part in that, and I take responsibility because I always felt like I tried to defend myself. But nowadays, what do I care about somebody that no matter what I say is not going to think anything different and doesn't want to have an intellectual conversation? What do I care what they think about me? So this is probably the longest video I've done in a while. Whether you guys like it or not will depend on what you say in the comment section and the amount of people that subscribe or unsubscribe and the thumbs up. If I see like 200 thumbs up on this video, that tells me that the majority of people like the stuff, and I'll definitely do it again. But since I don't have a lot of work and I have extra time, I would love to spend it with you guys. And I do have to get going by 6 o'clock because, again, with my cat Luna, I have to make sure she's fed on time because we have to give her insulin and stuff and her medication. So at 6 o'clock, unless it ends early, I have to go at 6. So, yeah, this is the longest one I've done since I came back. Daryl Griffin says it's 221. Okay, so he's talking about the X-Men with the first Sinister. That's X-Men 221. I have one that I bought the day it came out. I have a couple others that I spent maybe $10 on. That was definitely a book I have recommended, and I do recommend to take the chance on. That's low risk, high reward for that book. Vincent G says MCU using Jack of Hearts or Quasar and Guardians. Of the two, Quasar would probably be what I would suspect, but I have heard that they're using Nova. I think if Marvel is not careful, they may introduce too many people too quickly, and you might get a Spider-Man 3 situation. So I hope they don't start cramming too many people at once, because you may have Thor in the Guardians now. They may be talking about Nova now, and most people won't know. Again, outside of the comic book community, most people will not know who Quasar, Jack of Hearts, or even Nova is. So if you cram too many people in a 2-hour movie, most people are not going to have time to, put the depth into the character, and you can end up losing out. So I'd rather them spread it out and make it take a little longer, but have the quality over the quantity. So of those two, I would pick Quasar, but Nova's going to come before Quasar does. And I hope they don't do all three at the same time. It's just too much. Jay Moy says, thanks for the earlier answer regarding the 0.5 or the 1.0. Falls in line with buy the book, not the grade. Yeah, and there are going to be people that buy the book. There are going to be people that buy it for the grade. They're going to buy it for the price they can get it for. There's so many different ways to go. That's why I don't understand why some people get mad at somebody else's point of view. Because just imagine if everybody collected the same thing the same way. You know how hard it would be to buy a book if every single person wanted that book? That's why I love when people don't want the books that I have. Like I have some coverless books that I have. I have Amazing Spider-Man #1 coverless. I have Fantastic Four #1 with a facsimile cover. I have a second copy of Batman 59 coverless. I have Superman 2 coverless. But I only paid $300 for that book. A 0.5 is worth $3,000. And I love the fact that most people who claim to be comic book lovers would never buy a comic book without a cover. Well, last time I checked, if you are a comic book lover who loved comics just for the reading of it, you don't read anything off the cover. So why would you care if it had a cover or not? Because the story's inside the cover. But it also shows the hypocrisy of some people that just like to be negative just for the sake of being negative. And they wonder why they're angry and sick all the time. People don't understand how the immune system works. The more stressed you are, the more you cause yourself pain. So even if you're angry at somebody else, you're basically hurting yourself. And I learned that also from my old channel, which I'm glad, not glad that I shut it down, because some people didn't, they got to miss out on some of my helpful information, but I learned a lot from it. All right, non-related question. Lucido Balbin says, thanks, Chris. How are the cats? And what are your pickups this week? My pickups this week are none. I don't really buy a lot of new books anymore because of several reasons. Because of all the variants and because of the SJW stuff and because of the $4.99 price tags. Just not really my interest anymore. They're not making comic books for people like me anymore. They're making for the younger generation, and they wonder why it's failing. But my cats are starting to do better. Luna is back to eating normally. At one point, she stopped eating, and she was basically fading away, but we were able to save her. She still has diabetes, which we're going to cure. Which, by the way, if anybody wants, I will make that video about if you have cats or dogs, some of the biggest lies you've ever been told. I'll do that video. It's just going to be weird on a comic book channel. But if anybody wants that, I will think about doing that. But you can cure dog and cat diabetes. But she also has heart problems as well. So she's going to be forever on some form of medication. But I appreciate the asking about her. She's at least eating now and seeming like a normal cat again. We're not ready to give up on her. You know, she came to the right house. Chris Harris says, any input on keys for young girls? Trying to start a collection for my daughter. Ask your daughter what she likes. Get into conversations with your child. See what she's into, and then go from there. Or maybe just recommend, say, you know, go to your daughter and say, here's a book I loved as a child. I would love to give this to you. You know, sometimes it's not the actual character, but it's the bonding between father and son, or father and daughter, or mother and son, and mother and daughter. So it might not always be like, oh, you have to buy She-Ra or, you know, Spider-Woman. Maybe it could be Captain America because you told your daughter how much you loved Captain America, or Superman because of the principles he had. And you share that moment between father and daughter. That, to me, would mean more to her than the actual comic. And that's what most people in the business don't understand anymore. It's the connection between father and son or father and daughter, not the actual book itself. So I would just ask her questions. See how she responds. See what she likes. And maybe, you know, depending on the age of your daughter, she may not know what she likes. Introduce her to a couple of things. I mean, I guarantee you, we all love music that was only because we heard our parents playing it. And it was before our time. But it's sharing that bond. Like, my father passed away in 2012. I grew up with my father listening to Journey and the Doobie Brothers. That was a little bit before my time. I love, like, the group, the Del Vikings. That's a 50s group, because my father was in a 50s band. But it was that connection that we had that was the important part, not the actual band itself. It's the fact that I can associate the Doobie Brothers or the Del Vikings or Journey with my father. So if you want to buy something for your daughter, share something you could both love together or have a connection with. Because it doesn't matter if it's a financial success, she will always remember that moment where you guys shared that time together. It could be $1 book or it could be $1,000 book. It will not matter. Especially, God forbid, it doesn't happen for a while, but the day you're gone. You know, make it have meaning, not just value. I promise you, connection between father and daughter is more priceless than the value of any book you could ever give her. So base it on that, and you will never do wrong. You know, it's like that whole I love you 3000 thing. Think of it that way. Michelle T says, do you own a comic shop? No, I do not. And if I ever did, business-wise, you'd be crazy to have a physical store at this point. If I ever did something like that, I would just have a website, because with the rent that you have to spend for electricity and just the rent itself and everything else, I don't see how they make money anymore. But I do sell my comic book boxes. And funny you should ask that, and I will post the link again for anybody that's interested. And again, I will say that if anybody ends up having a YouTube channel, and see, here is the website that you'll see if you click on the link that I provided, because I have to copy it right here. This is my massage business website. I also have my organic products and stuff. If you actually go to here where it says shop, comic book packages, it will bring you to right here, which is all the way, you can scroll all the way down near the bottom. but this will show all the different comic book mystery boxes. I might add some individual comics there at some point. So I will post the link right now if you're interested in that. And like I said, if you have a YouTube channel and you tell me when you're purchasing them that you're going to do an unboxing, I'll throw in an extra comic for free. So if anything, you show that. So I don't own a comic shop, and I never will, because it's just it just doesn't make sense financially, because the big companies are trying to get rid of the comic shops at this point. Gino says, just subscribe. Welcome. Thank you. Appreciate the personal opinion and honesty. That is definitely something I will do. I will be very honest. And that's one thing I will claim about anybody that made accusations about me. Show a little proof. You know, anybody can make an accusation about somebody. Like I say all the time, judge a person by their character, not by their description. By their deeds you shall know them. So thank you, Gino. I'm welcome. I'm glad you're subscribed. And I hope you stay subscribed, and I hope you learn something from other videos. And like I said, if people thumb this up enough and they tell me that this is something they want to see again, I will absolutely do it again, because you may not like what I hear. It may be different from what you've heard elsewhere, but it will be my honest opinion. And always remember, it is my opinion. Doesn't mean you have to agree. Doesn't mean you have to like it. It's just, if you're going to ask for my opinion, I'm not going to give you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I believe. It doesn't mean it's right or it's right for you. Always keep that in mind. But I will never intentionally try and mislead anybody. So Big Will says, after Hulk 181, 180, what will you go up as the next Wolverine number? What will go up? Next Wolverine Limited number 1 or Wolverine number 1 1988? Obviously, the Limited will be more valued because it's older. It probably has a lesser print run, less chance of a higher grade than the 88 version, because at that point they were mass producing books. I'm sure everybody and their grandmother that grew up in the 90s has a Wolverine number 1 from the 1988 version. I'm sure not as many people have the Wolverine number 1 as the limited series, the issues 1 through 4. Because remember, Wolverine number 1, the limited series, was his first solo outing. So that's going to be way more important. The Wolverine number 1 from 1988 is his first his first series. So remember, the original Wolverine number 1 is only a 4-book limited series. The Wolverine number 1 from 1988 is his first ever solo continuing series. But I don't think it'll do as well. But it'll still, again, goes what you pay for it. I got Wolverine number 1 cover price, and I think I bought a couple for $10 or less. That's when it's worth taking the chance on. Natasha says, I need to go now. Love your videos, and I will rewatch this entire one tomorrow, like all of them. Bye for now. Thank you for that. And by the way, if you're one of my power viewers, the only way you could say you're a power viewer on this one is if you watch the, as of now, close to 3-hour video. So ultra power viewer means you watch every video of mine you watch from beginning to end. And again, I do it by the honor system. There's no way I can check, nor do I want to. So if you're a person that skips around and only watches a couple of videos and then says they're claiming to be a power viewer, well, you're not really being honest, and we want integrity here. So, I mean, if you skip every now and then, that's perfectly fine. You're not going to gain or lose anything from being it. It's my way of saying thank you to those who watch entire videos. But this one's going to be some homework. I would be very shocked if I see a lot of people saying they're a power viewer on this video. Because, you know, I can't even imagine listening to me for 3 hours. I could just imagine everybody else. So if you power viewed this one, God bless you. You're a better man or woman than I ever will be. So if you truly watch this from beginning to end, be very proud of your power viewer status on this one. And make sure in the comment section when it uploads, you post that. All right, so Joseph says thumbs up. Thank you. Mark G says, hey, Chris, are you going to do a live show and take phone calls? Yeah, that one will never happen. With my haters out there, the last thing I would ever do is put out my personal information, because at one point on my other channel, I used to get death threats. People put out my personal information, so there would be no way in Hades I would ever put my personal information out there, because my haters would do everything they can to make my life miserable, because people even contacted my wife, my sister, and my mother, threatening them. And that's why I don't even do the live shows like I used to, inviting people, because there are some people out there that are sick individuals. And unfortunately, you know, I can understand if I'm saying stuff like I murdered children or something. I can understand somebody being hateful. But for some people to hate me with such passion that they thumb down every video every day, regardless of what it is, just because I have a difference of opinion on comic books, shows that some people are just too mentally unstable and too angry for me to ever do something like that. So as much as that's a cool idea, and if in a normal world where there were normal people watching and not some of these psychopaths, and those are the few, not the many, trust me, but yeah, that would never happen. It's a good idea, but in a perfect world, I'd do it. But no, unfortunately, not with haters that I have. If you notice, there's not one video of mine that doesn't have a thumbs down. Even my video talking about the recovery of my cat Luna, it's got 14 thumbs down. Really? They're allowed, and that's why I never take it down. If I'm keeping somebody from murdering somebody or robbing a bank because they put their anger out on me in my YouTube video about comic books, God bless them. Let them do it. But definitely as far as anything putting out my personal information, there's no way. I got to protect my family. And that's why I say if people want to mail me things, and if you ever want to do that, just go to my description. There's a way you can mail like a comic book, or if you want to make art or anything like that, if you want to send something to me. What I said is people have to have a return address, and it has to have a tracking number. Anything else will be returned. Because unfortunately, you know, there's some crazy people out there, and I have a family I have to take care of. And I'm sure most normal people understand that. All right, so let's see. I have to wrap this up in a few minutes. Olga says, my granddaughters love My Little Pony, The Flash, Catwoman, and Harlequin, and Wonder Woman. Those are great books to get your grandchildren. But remember, introduce them to things that you love. Just because they love something doesn't mean they might not love something else. So, you know, share something about you and you'll have a connection that will be forever. Let's see. Todd24 Yell says, hey, Chris, love WLC. Thank you. I'm very glad you do, and I appreciate everybody that does. Mastodon Comics says, I think you are one for an hour when I came in. Yeah, but definitely nothing close to this. But like I said, my old channel I used to do an average of 6 to 8 hours. And then afterwards, we talked for an hour after. It's like it was, and I did that 3 times a week, every week. I had like regular shows that I did. Like Sundays were the auctions. Mondays were pull out Mondays. Tuesdays, I did unboxing videos where I just invited people to do stuff and talked about general chats. I mean, there were people waiting in line to try and get into my live shows. But then the few bad apples spoiled that tree, but we're not going to get into that. I don't want to talk negative. People are the way they are. They can change if they want to. Condoning Drone says, how can you afford all those keys in between jobs? Because the fact me and my wife don't go out. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't drink coffee. I don't go out to clubs. We don't go out to vacations. Not because we don't need to. We spend our time together. So all of that money I would have spent on other stuff. You know, I don't go to strip clubs or anything like that. I do have several jobs. I mean, I do make a little bit of money on YouTube. I mean, it's like $150 a month with between super chats and the advertisements. You know, I have my massage business. I make and sell organic products. Like if you click on the website that I posted, you know, it's mostly about my crystals and pyramids. And people made fun of those. I mean, you want to make fun of a person trying to make a business where I'm not putting a gun to anybody's head. You know, in this world, you know, people have the right to sell something. It's not like I force somebody to do it. But I have a lot of different ways that I make money. I've always believed in never being stuck. And money that I would have spent on cigarettes or alcohol or anything like that, I save up and spend on my comics. And because I have a wife that I have communication with, she knows what I spend it for. I did make some money a little bit on the mystery boxes. That's why I sell those as well. There's always a way. That's why I tell people you're never stuck unless you choose to. So that's kind of how I do it. Hopefully that answers the question. Chris Harris says, thanks. You are absolutely spot on with just enjoying the bond. Yep, that's what it should be all about. So it doesn't matter what the book is. If you have that connection, you'll forever be bonded with that. Eddie Mullet says, I may have if YouTube would actually notify. Yeah, YouTube's pretty bad with that, even if you hit the notification bell. But hit the notification bell just in case, because you never know. They might accidentally tell people, because it has happened before. And sorry if I missed something, because every time when there's new new comments, I go to scroll and all of a sudden it goes down like 50. So forgive me if I missed something. So again, write in capital letters. So we're going to do one more Um, Have no fear says, "Oh, I'd be interested in the cat diabetes show." Yeah, I'll definitely do that because if you own a cat or a dog, there's many things that you've been told that because of the research of what I learned, because I don't believe in just believing everything I hear. I do my own research, which is something many people do not do. You'd be amazed at many things that people take for granted. I guarantee they're giving their pets now that when you research them, find out that's what's causing diabetes and the illnesses. I'll make a video about that. So I want to thank everybody. Let's do today's surprise subscriber shout out. I'm going to give that to Big Will and Michelle T. You both are today's surprise subscriber shout out. I have to get going because I have to feed Luna. Make sure she gets her medication. So 3-hour video, definitely long. Show me you're a power viewer. Watch this whole video. Hopefully you learned something. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please share it. Hit subscribe. And don't forget, it's not you. It is not I. It's We Love Comics. Thanks so much for sticking around. Even if you watch for 5 minutes, hopefully you learned something. Michelle T says, how can I support you on Patreon? I do have a Patreon account. If you want to support my channel, the link is in the description for that. The best thing I would recommend is get one of the comic mystery boxes, because this way you're getting something back. I mean, as much as I appreciate like Patreon, if you get one of the mystery boxes, at least you're getting something back. But if you don't want to do that and you want to do Patreon, you can visit it. The link is in the description. So thank you to anybody that wants to do that. And Michelle, thank you for that. It doesn't matter the amount, because to me, it's the thought that counts. So even if you don't do it, just the thought of even mentioning it means a lot to me. So thank you very much. Love you all. Hopefully you learned something from this. And if I get enough thumbs up on this, if I get 200 thumbs up on this video, I will absolutely do this more often, because that shows me that you guys appreciate it. So thank you very much. Have a great day. And don't forget, it's not you. It is not I. It's We Love Comics. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for listening.